There we go. All right. Yeah.
All right. It looks like we are live, guys. Hopefully everybody can hear me out there today.
Yeah.
We are going to get this show rolling. We're very excited today to announce the fact that we have Adam Souza on with us from Herban Acres. From What Did Adam Say?
Hey.
Man, I'm really excited to finally get you on. We've been trying to get you on for a while. We've had a couple of hit or misses here, right? But the thing that's great about you that I don't think you talk about enough is all the other stuff that you're doing outside of the stuff, like hosting panels and stuff like that. But we're going to get to this really shortly. Guys, we have a stacked show for you guys today. Tim will be on a little bit later. We'll discuss what's going on in Vermont about S54 and what is happening and how that whole situation's panning out. So we'll have a little bit of news later today. We have Chef Rodney joining us again today from Digitally Dope TV. He's going to be providing us with our strain of the week, guys. I can't wait to show you what's going on because it's a good one. We have Thomas Morcombe of Vermont Grow Coaching. He's here with our growers guide. He's back this week. Hopefully he's feeling a lot better. He was a little under the weather last week, guys. So we got the fortunate chance to play you guys his latest episode of how to tell when your trichomes are ready. How do you tell when your plants need to come down? It's one of the most confusing questions, and as a new grower, it's one of those questions that no one feels really good about because it's really kind of hard to find pictures that explain what you're looking for, except for clear amber and milky, and then what the hell does that mean, right? So if you guys want to check it out, it's on our YouTube page, it's on our Facebook page, you can find it. Big shout out to James Gordon for the hat. I got it a year ago today, and I don't wear it enough to be honest with you because it's a hand designed, hand painted, hand everything hat.
That's pretty flashy.
I'm scared as shit to put it on my head sometimes, right? So I want to give a big shout out to James. This weekend was going to be the Pipe Classic kickoff, which if you guys don't know, you definitely should check out Pipe Classic. Unfortunately, this year, due to COVID, they can't do it. So they're doing a Pipe Classic qualifier. So if you guys blow glass or you're interested in anything glass, you have to check out the Burn Gallery's Pipe Classic. We've had so much fun with that event over the years that it's just one of my favorite events. And now we have Adam Souza on, who this is show number 2 for Adam. So we're going to try to keep it fresh and clean for everybody that watched earlier. But you know, Adam's been a huge part of our cannabis scene out here in Massachusetts, right? We met a couple years ago. And his journey has been awesome to see and to call you a friend, man, and to support you. Because it's been, you know, like everybody else in this cannabis industry, we have a few stories to talk about, right? I mean, we've had some ups and downs, we've had some ins and outs, we've had, you know, people, you know, great things come out of nowhere and shit storms come out of everywhere, right? And in Mass right now, we'll discuss this later, but you know, it's a crazy state right now, right?
It's the Wild West, Wild East.
Right? You know, it started off as like we're all in this together, and now it's like, you know, it's interesting to see where we're at, right? And then with the industry. Now we'll talk about this because I know you're deep into this, man. So Adam's big thing is hemp. Like you're a hemp farmer. You have Herban Acres, right? Herban Acres, you started a few years ago. You have kiosk. You're in storage. You're making products. So I mean, things are really awesome for you, man. And then the best part about everything is, for a minute there, we didn't see you on podcasts, and now we see you on podcasts again. So. Thank you for getting back to that because, as you know, we're all family here, so we want to make sure that everybody is enjoying themselves.
Yeah, dude, I fell off so hard on podcasting. Like during quarantine, I was doing podcasting damn near every day and doing live streams, which helped my business a ton. You know, just being able to have this set up and the know-how to be able to run all this stuff on your own is such a good value add to whatever business you have, because without it, I don't know if we would have really survived. You know, the shutdown was tough for us, having to shut down our malls, and all of our people that like sell our products had to shut down too.
Right now, I mean, we'll discuss that in a little bit about the effects of COVID on your business, right? But right now, let's talk about who you are and where you're from and how the hell you got into cannabis. I know you come from the music industry, you come out of the sales industry, so you got some cool, unique stories. I'm a music industry guy, and we both kind of ended up here, you know. And like you
Yeah.
said, there's a lot of things that are the same, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in music, let's be honest, if you're in music, cannabis and music kind of go hand to hand, right? So with that being said, give us a little bit of background from you, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my mic just shit the bed again. Am I good?
No,
I'm
we
here.
can hear you.
You good?
Okay. So, yeah, a little bit about me. I'm 30 years old. I'm from Massachusetts, born and raised here. My father was the head grower of a local nursery here from the time that I was knee high until now, current day. So I was kind of brainwashed, if you will, into agriculture. It was just ingrained in me. But being the hyper aware kid that I was, I noticed that, we were poor and my dad didn't really have a lot of money. So when I turned old enough to have jobs, I started selling stuff, and it might or may or may not have been.
You learned the metric system.
Yeah, I learned the
Yeah,
metric
yeah.
system. It may or may not have been through cannabis, and that was the first taste of like, oh, this is fun. I could sell
Hmm.
stuff. Then I started working at Best Buy, and I was killing it there. And then I moved on to cell phone sales, all the while pushing music heavy at that time. I don't really push it heavy anymore, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm sure we'll get into a music conversation. So yeah, I kind of moved around a lot. Wasn't really stable as a kid. My parents, like I said, they were poor. They kind of like I was basically on my own by the time I was like 16, 17 years old, and homeless by the time I was 19. And through all these struggles, I kind of felt like desperate, right? So I just moved across the country with a suitcase packed to one. I had one friend in Wyoming, and I was like, I'm gonna come move out there with you, bro. And we had the weed game on lock, and we had some fire, and we were down in Colorado all the time, so I was able to see Colorado in 2012 when it was starting to legalize, and I really started getting the wheels moving. I started talking to my dad about like, Dad, you need to talk to your boss about getting into marijuana because this is going to be huge. Your business is slowly failing. Well, this could help bring it back. Like, let's do it. I started talking to him about that back then. I kept moving, ended up in Colorado in 2015. And that's when I started getting into like high level sales, while high, like I was high
High
every
level
day.
sales. I get it.
Yes, exactly. Like I would have Saturday morning meetings where I got to talk to 12 stores worth of people and all the managers and VPs and regionals, and I'm fucking stony baloney. Like I just finished smoking on my before my ride,
There you
and
go.
it's one of those things that I think really helped me through sales because it just like kept me grounded.
Yep. I
So
can
I
agree with that being in sales. I think the funny part about when you like that though is it's like that meme hack, right? If you're always stoned, people always expect you to be that way. And the day like
Yep.
you're sick and you don't smoke and you come into work, everyone's like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yes, for real, bro. Like the day you forgot to re up or something, and you come in and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Nothing.
Tom,
Leave me alone."
Thomas, that just happened to you. Thomas, you were too sober and you forgot a hat. Like literally just
I,
happened.
I was. I didn't even have a hat. Now I've
Yeah.
got the wrong hat. It's on
We were like,
backwards. Not
"What's
showing
wrong
up
with
right on
you?" And he was like, "I'm
everything.
stupid sober."
But
Yeah.
a couple of good dab rips and one of these, and I'm back on track.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you
It
guys
takes
bring up
all
a
that.
great point, and I don't mean to cut Adam off, but like we talk about this a lot. It's like for some people, cannabis helps you focus and zeroes you right in, right? So like a lot of people with ADHD, myself included, if
Hi.
we don't smoke, like Thomas, right? If we don't smoke, we're running circles and like it just our brains are popping off, but like nothing's happening, right? So to get anything done, we have to be stoned. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have something heavy before bed, there's no bed in sight. Your head just keeps going and going and going.
I use the term medicated.
Medicate, yeah, and that's exactly
Medicated.
what we want
That's
to talk about here. It's medication. So and it works. And Adam is a great example of that. So tell us a little more about that story, Adam. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to point that out because that's one thing we always talk about. It's like how to be a successful stoner. You know what I mean? And people don't think that's two words that can be related, successful and stoner. And we I think we prove it wrong every day, right?
Every
Um,
day, dude. Every day. It's like more and more every day. I feel like it gets proven wrong.
tap your mic, bro.
yeah, we can barely hear you, buddy.
straight up and down. All right, let me see this.
I
Say
don't know
something
what's
to it.
going on.
That sounds like a short in the cord.
Yeah, there we go. All right. I just put the connector back together. All right. Yeah, sorry about that. So, what were we talking about again?
Smoking
Get
weed to
back on
stay
track,
focused,
just-
right?
Oh yeah, staying focused and while smoking weed. Yeah.
No.
So yeah, I feel like more and more every day you see that successful stoner is not an oxymoron whatsoever, and definitely something that belongs in the same sentence. Um, because even so I got to high level sales positions. I basically in AT&T I was one level below VP. So my only step that I could go up was VP. I was making about $80,000 a year, and I was fighting for a raise and trying to make six figures, and it probably would have happened the next year. um and I still was, unhappy. I felt like I was a hamster on a wheel, and I just like was just moving and okay, I'm just plugging along. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But what about cannabis? And my son was living here when I moved to Colorado. I was unfortunately not able to see him at the time. So I kind of was like in Massachusetts doing nothing with my life and was like, I'm just going to move to Colorado for a job opportunity and see what happens, which was amazing because I got that job. After about a year and a half of being in Colorado, I finally got a paid vacation, my first one ever. And on my paid vacation, I set up like 5 interviews. They were all for, pretty similar positions to what I was doing in AT&T, similar pay, similar structure type of things. And T-Mobile wanted to hire me, and they were going to pay me a little bit more than AT&T to basically launch the program that I helped launch with AT&T. I started doing that, and I started in September 2016. We hit our yearly goal. That was the first time they ever hit yearly goal in that section of T-Mobile for business add-ons ever. And then the following year, 2017, we hit the yearly goal by the end of February. So I started asking for a raise. And they told me, that's inappropriate. You haven't been here for more than a year. You shouldn't ask for a raise. And I said, I really doubt that anybody else in this organization has made as much money as I've made for the company in the past 6 months, even if they've been here for 3 years. So this is the raise that I want. And I think it's fair. I know this is what I made you guys in profit. This is X amount of profit. Obviously, I know there's employees, yada, 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 all that stuff. So long story short, they told me halfway through March that my position was going to be no longer at the end of March, and they were going to interview me for a different position that was comparable to the one I had. So this was like March 16th that they told me that. March like 26th, I finally have an interview. I had to drive down to Connecticut 2 hours to go interview with the VP. It's like an interview for a new employee. He probably talked to me for 5-10 minutes, if that. Like as if he didn't know me at all. They finally offered me a job position on March 30th. My position's done on the 31st, mind you. They offered me a key holder position. Now, key holder position for them is one step above an entry level employee. So instead of getting paid $9 an hour, you get paid $10 an hour, and all the bonuses are exactly the same as an entry level employee. And I looked at the structure of all the bonuses and I said, damn, if I max out on this, I can't even hit like a quarter of what I was making. Like, what the hell is this? And I was super bummed, super depressed, but I still was doing my job. And in doing my job, which is why I try to always just do the right thing, even when it sucks. One of my managers was like, wait, you're not quitting, right? I said, no. I mean, they're trying to give me this bullshit position. They're getting rid of my position, but I'm not quitting. They're not firing me. They're just getting rid of my position. And they're like, well, that's technically a layoff. You could collect unemployment. And I was like, I've never collected unemployment. I don't know about that. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And then I was just like, he's like, call them. So I called them and I said, yada, yada, yada. Don't I get unemployment? And they were silent for like 10 seconds. And it's like, then they're like, hold on, I'll call you back. Click. And they call me back like a half hour later and they say, yeah, you can get unemployment. So what do you want to do? And I'm like, I'm going to take that because they told me the amount and it was like 2.5 times what I could max out at as a key holder.
Huh.
So I took,
No.
yeah, it's because I've never used unemployment until I was 27 years old, you know, so, and I've been working since I was 13. So yeah, I stopped working there at the end of March, and I started getting into solar sales because it was a 1099, and I knew I could kind of double up and not have to pay taxes if I just don't make a certain amount of money.
Right.
And that taught me a lot about the sun positioning, which I turned into growing, and spent pretty much all of my unemployment money that I didn't need for bills on growing weed, learning how to grow weed, failing miserably, having bad partners, being robbed, all that fun stuff that you go through till I got to the point of, you know, meeting my then partner Andrew, and he had a vegetable farm. I was helping him on the vegetable farm, and I was talking to him about all my cannabis ideas, and we started a podcast together, and I started plugging seeds into his brain of hemp, hemp. Let's grow hemp. Let's grow hemp. It's just like, it's the same exact thing. Marijuana is hemp. It's all cannabis. So let's start doing that. You know how to grow and grow soil. Let's combine our efforts. So we did that. I brought my product line that I created to the organization, and we started doing shows and being super sales centric, but also media centric. Having a lot of content out there, having a lot of interviews like this, always being at different conventions and whatnot. So yeah, man, it's been a long fucking journey.
Hmm. Well, you said a couple fun, interesting things that we love to talk about here in the show. It's the ups and downs of the industry. You know what I mean? Now that you're here and you went through this travel, right? The industry really kind of slaps you upside the head a little bit, and a lot of people wonder why. But now we're in an industry. I mean, let's talk about this for a minute. We don't have any regulations. It's a lot of people that are used to a black market type of system of cutthroat, and um, you know, it's a big industry, right? There's a lot of people. There's room for everybody. This is what I always say to everybody. So as long as we work together and we accomplish our goals, we should be able to work together. But I mean, we kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, and what we've seen in the last year is really kind of completely opposite from what we saw the year before, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way things are blowing up in mass. Now, I mean, you went to and got into hemp, right? And when did you guys start the Herban Acres project?
So we officially started Urban Acres in 2018 December. I think it was actually December 18th, 2018. We That was when I said, "Hey, Trump just passed laws that made hemp legal. So how about that hemp?" And he finally was like, he kind of, I could see him like,
Right?
and a couple more weeks of just working on him, he was like, "All right, fine, let's do it, but we got to stay secretive. I don't want to get fired from my job." I said, all right, I respect that." So for like a few weeks on the podcast, I would be like, "Yeah, and we're getting into something. Can't really talk about it yet, but we're getting into something." And on like the third week of me doing that, Andrew was like, "Hemp. We're growing hemp. We're getting into hemp." So we started working on our business plan. We started trying to get big investors immediately because I'm that type of person that's like, all in, let's go do this. We started growing, we got our license, and yeah, and here we are.
What was the process like? I mean, we always talk about
For
getting these businesses
licensing,
started, but no one ever talks about the process. I mean, we've talked, like River Run Gardens and places like that
love those guys.
who've been waiting how many years to get a license, right?
So their process is much harder than ours, I will say, but our process still sucks. So we applied for our license in 2019, January 4th. The way I see it, nobody's in the office January 1st. January 2nd, everybody's still nursing a hangover. So it was basically the second day of the year, the third and the fourth, you know? So we applied on the second day of the year, and we didn't even hear back until the beginning of April. And then we had our inspection at the end of April, and we got our license like on the last day of April 2019. And so we didn't even get seeds in hand until like May 6th, and didn't even get plants on the ground until June 6th. So in my mind, a month behind where we really wanted to be. Because hemp is hardy, man. You don't have to like traditional marijuana, traditional cannabis. when I'd put it outdoors too early, it'd get all messed up. But hemp, man, like we had some seeds pop up this year on their own, and those things are trees. They're like 15 footers, and you couldn't knock them down if you drop kicked them. And they just grew on their own, like stuff that we composted, and like it just grew on its own. And so the process kind of sucked in that sense. What's even worse than that, though, is just the kind of weird line, right? You said there's, like you said, there's no regulations. There are no regulations on CBD in Massachusetts. You're not hearing me incorrectly. There are only guidelines. So that means that it is technically not legal. It's technically not illegal either. It's kind of a gray market, like you said. It's the black market turning a little bit more legit. And I see it all the time. I mean, I came from the black market. I know a lot of people that came from the black market. It's kind of a part of the game. Um, I forgot where I was going with that. ADD like a motherfucker. I thought the sativa with the Blue Dream would help, man, but it's
Dude, none of us are high enough right now to do this. We're all kind of scrambled to get here. We're all sat down and we all looked at each other. We're like, none of us are high enough to do this. So
we're all
working on
smoking
it.
like
I got you, fam. No, I got you, fam. So basically,
Trying to
it's
catch up,
the
trying to
Wild
catch up,
West,
trying to
and
catch up.
There's no laws, but there's guidelines.
yes, I love
Yeah,
you. Thank
but
you.
the problem with, I mean, the biggest problem with that though is, I mean, we talk about every week, with these, no laws and light guidelines, it leaves interpretations open. It leaves the ability to be fucked over, right? Because I mean,
Yes.
these businesses are not like, some of them aren't real legit. Some of them have to be real legit. But like we were saying before, it's a black market business that's trying to go legit, right? Follow the rules. And
Yep.
a lot of these guys really try their hardest and do it the right way, right?
And a
Uh,
little overly legit. Like in Massachusetts, we had to get FBI background checks this year.
That's weird.
just crazy, right? And then and then this is the biggest part of our industry that we always talk about, right? It's like when we get the people that come in and they want to learn, right? Or they want to hire somebody and they can't hire a felon, right? Like, most of these felons out there that are in the cannabis industry are probably the best growers you're ever gonna like get near your plant,
Facts.
right?
They understand what
They're
patients
probably a
are.
felon because they were growing some dank ass weed for years. And now they're felons and we can't hire them in our industry. So we're stuck with like tomato producers. And I don't mean to knock any tomato producers
Tomato,
out
corn, and
there,
wheat.
but that's literally what we're seeing come over to the industry, right? And as you know, Adam, it's not the same thing. And then when you introduce it to a New England climate, Thomas today even hit it on his. You guys will see it in his thing. Like the New England climate is not the easiest climate to grow in, and I'm sure Adam can agree with us on that because our weather just bounces around so much. And we have high levels of humidity and moisture in our air. We have dew in the morning. Things that out west doesn't have to deal with on a daily basis. You know what I
Nope.
mean? So growing
Not to
plants
mention the
like here.
fluctuations. I mean, we can hit like 30% humidity and 90% humidity in the same day.
Yep.
Yeah.
And 75 degrees and 40 degrees or 30 degrees in the same day.
Well, I mean, look at just the last 2 days alone. It was what 30 degrees yesterday, and I went outside today. It had to be 75 degrees, 80 degrees. Like it was beautiful.
And the humidity was all out of whack and stuff too. And all the plants that were put there properly and they were using the proper genetics and stuff. Those plants all made it through and they're all super happy today. And all the ones that didn't, well, hopefully you put the right genetics in the ground.
Genetics is so important. Like last year, right? So we grew on 1/10 of an acre. So we started small. I think that everybody should start small with
That's
the hemp
very
game.
important, definitely.
Yeah, super important. I'm the type of balls to the wall type of person that if I would have had 100 acres in front of me last year, I would have started with 100 acres. Like I'm just that type of person. But it would have been a mistake, I think. So we started on 1/10 of an acre. We got 200 pounds of dry weight off of our 1/10 of an acre. And so at scale per acre, that's 2,000 pounds per acre. Um, and we made a couple huge mistakes. The first one we made is we bought a cultivar called OTTO, not like autoflower, OTTO. It grew like a male is the only way I can really describe it. It grew tall, lanky. The internodal spacing between the nugs was ugly and disgusting looking. There was like no terpene to it. It was just all bad. And even worse than that, they were giant plants. They were like 15 feet tall, but they got like a half a pound each off of them.
That's
And
Snickle Fritz.
it's Snickle Fritz.
Fritz.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. I
That's
love
from
that.
Pineapple Express, man.
Oh yes.
Yeah, right.
So if we would have just grown our other plants like this one in the background,
That's gorgeous.
That was a 6-pounder, and that strain all averaged about 5 pounds. So if we would have just not grown the strain that grew a half a pound, which was about a third of our crop, we would have ended up with somewhere around 400, which is 4,000 pounds per acre, which is kind of unheard of in the hemp market. And next year I started working on it this year, but I got started too late. Next year I'm working on something that would allow you to get around 12,000 pounds an acre.
Right.
That's pretty insane.
Yes. Yeah, farmers are averaging about 1,000 pounds an acre right now, I'd say.
Yeah, all of the farmers that I work with, they all shoot for 2,000. Some of them hit it. Some of them, a few of them will go over. Not very many of them do, but a good share of them, especially with the northern climate and stuff, and with the weather and stuff we've been having, bud rot sets in and everything, and people start losing stuff right off the bat. So, I mean, I've had farmers. In fact, my segment today is on bud rot specifically for that reason. I visited a farmer who had no idea what was going on, and until he had lost several plants, and at that point it had spread throughout a considerable amount of the field.
Corn borers. Yep.
You guys bring up a great point. This is something I stress a lot, especially in New England grows, is genetics, right? I mean, we depend on the genetic that you're growing. I mean, a lot of the equator style genetics aren't going to work great up here. You know what I mean?
Correct.
A lot of people are going right for those equator belt, Afghanis and Mauis and, strains that are used to growing in 90-degree direct sunlight for their 3 months or 4 months, right? And where up here, you get it maybe for a month, if that, right?
Yep.
And then also with like PM molds and strengths, like, we talk to people about feminizing strains, how they can weaken them up, you know what I mean? Or again, the different phenos and the stuff that we're running, and like how stable is this plant? You know what I mean?
We also got to look at the amount of work you want to put in. So like the feminized thing, it's really tough because, so many people are against feminized plants, and I get it, it's like a genetic mutation. But what people don't realize is that you can kind of accidentally end up with a feminized plant. And it's really not the worst thing in the world. Like realistically, what everybody calls a hermaphrodite is really most likely feminized. So like, for instance, we had a lot of our field last year, most of our field, I would say, was seeded. The only thing that we could see is that there was a brand new, super bright street light shining on our field at night at all times at night. So it could be some light stress in there because, a light source that bright every night is going to do that. If it is that kind of stress and it's not some kind of cross pollination, there's a good chance that those seeds are feminized.
Well, we had Rick Campanella on a few months ago, right? He was talking about hermaphrodites, right? And like how if we're trying to create seeds, some of the best things you want is that hermaphrodite, right? Because it's still a female chromosome at that point, right? It didn't really, it's not a straight up male, right? So it's a confused woman, you know what I mean? Let's talk about that, right? But he makes a good point. It was something I haven't heard quite yet because we hear a lot about like colloidal silver and ways you can do tricks to get the feminization, right?
And that's a stress. The colloidal silver is just a stress. That's all you're doing to it is stressing out the plant to get seeds. Because here's the thing: all cannabis plants, every single one that is currently growing and every single one that is ever going to grow, possesses a small hermaphrodite trait. And it possesses this trait because in the off chance that it doesn't get pollinated, it's not just going to die. It has something in there that says, oh shit, I got to survive. Oh, and creates seeds. And that's what's kind of cool about cannabis.
It's really unique when you talk about it like that because nobody ever thinks about it. Everybody takes that hermaphrodite and gets rid of it, or that plant that, like you were saying earlier, it's just an ugly fucking mess of a plant. And you're like, what am I doing with this thing? And 9 times out of 10, those are the ones that give you the best results, right?
Yep.
The one that has, I had one that had, 1, 3, 5, 7 leaves all over the place. And you're like looking at like, what the fuck is wrong with this thing? You know what I mean? But a producer, you know what I mean? So a lot, it's like the growers, the best growers in the world will talk to you about that little guy in the corner. Like, don't ever throw him away because he's usually the biggest guy in the room, You just start off slower. There's always something, right?
It's a shower, not a grower.
Right. But we talk about seeds, man. I mean, seeds is one of the biggest industries, and I'm glad you're on because I mean, obviously you've had to deal with it. We've seen issues here in Vermont. I mean, I'm sure you've seen issues in Mass with seeds, and it's either, they come in hot because you really don't know what you're gonna get, right? They're not very good genetics, so you have mold issues, right? And we could talk about PM molds and why we see it so prevalent out here. That'd be a great question for you to answer as well, because I mean we kind of hit it on the head with our weather out here. But why do
Yeah.
people have so many mold issues? I mean, what can we do to work ourselves around that?
So working around that, it takes some ingenuity. You got to figure out how you're going to space out your plants, first of all, so that way there's enough spacing between the plants to get airflow. You have to look at your yard and figure out, okay, where's the cross breeze coming from the most? Where do I get like the most breeze coming from? I should probably position my garden into that. The other thing is, and I'm really trying not to step on your subject. I don't know what you're going to talk about, but I know you're going to talk about hemp borers. So I want to hold off on that till later. So that's another big problem is pests. The pests that are in this area are pretty bad, and they cause a lot of the issues. And if you don't pay attention to them, they can go systemic. Like I literally was playing surgeon last year and slicing the stalk down the middle, splitting it open, pulling the hemp borer out, spraying the inside with some colloidal silver to clean it out because it's antibacterial and antifungal and all that, and then closing it with grafting tape and it would heal up. And the funny thing is, we had one plant that was like super infected. We cut out like 10 different caterpillars, and after doing that like two different times, that plant seemed to have like a resistance to corn borers and stopped uh, getting attacked by them pretty much.
Mhm.
It was weird. The other thing that was weird that it taught me, some of it has to do with, like you said, it's genetics. So certain terpenes of plants will actually attract bugs too. We would notice that we would have rows of plants, and in the middle of one of the rows of plants of like everything's the same strain, we have one plopped in there that's a different cultivar, and that one plant will have a shit ton of corn borers on them, like so many that you can't even cut them out. You're just like, all right, cut this plant down, throw it away. It's weird how that
Strains,
happens.
strains high in linalool are actually known to attract borers,
Yep.
as well
Like I
as
say,
several other pests.
we have strains that can be attractive, with terps, and we have strains that can also act as a deterrent, right?
Yep.
A couple different strains is like you said, you can also grow herbs and things around your plants like rosemary,
Garlic.
different things, garlic that will actually be a
Dude,
deterrent.
garlic is one of the best things because you can use it kind of as a cover crop, and you're gonna harvest it in the summertime basically. So it's you can replant after that, and then you can have that growing as your wintertime crop and have a shit ton of good garlic. Oh man, it's a treat for sure.
But you know
And
what? I want to jump on something real quick, and I was hoping to do this at the beginning of the show, but you just reminded me of it. I don't know if anybody's seen this yet, but it just came out. Kiss the Ground. Okay. If you guys haven't seen this movie yet or this documentary on Netflix, you have to see it because it discusses a lot of this and what we're doing our cover crops. We're probably gonna end up doing a whole show on that documentary. It was just amazing to see what's going on in soil erosion and stuff like that, and like what we're talking about, like everything we're talking about is kind of directly reflected to this. Um, when you were saying cover crop though, like we were talking about different plants. What before you go off on cover crop and just leave it alone for those people who don't understand what cover crop is, because unless you're really doing a no-till style garden, right?
mhm.
We don't talk about cover crops, right? Because a lot of these guys are outside, they're not thinking cover crops, so they're not thinking about that. What is a cover crop? How does that affect it in what you're trying to do?
So a cover crop will help maintain your nitrogen and as well as some of your other nutrients as and also maintain your topsoil. So a good cover crop that a lot of people use is like clove, right? So and there's winter rye is one of them. There's a couple good cover crops, and what it'll do is kind of preserve your soil. It'll also help with weed pressure. Something that could be done besides a cover crop also is a silage tarp. So you can get a tarp, and in the fall, you cover your crop after you harvest, obviously, with the silage tarp. And throughout the winter and early spring, the sun will basically bake everything underneath. because when you have weed pressure, not only do you have the weeds, but you have the weeds seeds, and sometimes they're deep in there. So when you till or harrow or broad fork or whatever you're doing to the soil, you'll stir up those seeds, and that's when the weed pressure starts getting heavier.
Mm.
So when you have the silage tarp, it gets so hot that it bakes the seeds and kills them all and kills the weeds on top of it. So when you peel that back in the spring, you have a nice, lush, moist, non seeded with weeds soil. That'll be easier to manage in the spring, so you can prep your soil easier and then be able to plant sooner and get going.
Mm. That can, like, we're talking about certain herbs. Are most herbs really usable as a cover crop? I mean, we talk about
It
peat
depends.
moss, and what about like lavenders and other gardening things that people typically grow in their garden? Can those be effective cover crops, or no?
Lavender will probably attract more bugs. So, and it's a summertime growing thing. So in the winter it'll kind of go dormant a little bit. So I probably wouldn't say it's a great cover crop. It's your cover crops are going to depend on your region that you live in, and a lot on that. So you got to figure out what the best cover crop for your region is. Just kind of do some
Mhm.
research. But there's, people have a lot of different methods for how they do that. Like some people use plastic
Now,
tarps on their rows to keep in the moisture and all that fun stuff. I'm not a huge
right.
fan of that, but it works. I see people using it.
Now, can you do now as far as cover crops go? I mean, me and Tom, and our growers, we talk about cover crops a lot when it comes to the no-till garden. Like, is this something that you would suggest doing, like in your hemp field, like right behind you? Is that something that is recommended to do, or not necessarily needed?
That field is no till. So that field has never ever been tilled. It's broad forked though. So a broad fork is it's hard to describe. It's like a fork. Think about a fork with six spigots on it or whatever they're called, but giant. Like it's as wide as my shoulders are. And like there's two wooden poles that are connected to it, and you stab it into the ground, and then you pull it up, and it loosens the ground without disturbing all the microbiology of the soil, and without, like, think about a tiller, right? A tiller is chopping up all the worms, is chopping up everything. Like a broad fork is just kind of, it's moving the earth to kind of
Right.
just like move it around a little bit and allow a good path for the roots to go.
Yes, it's ripping up 6 inches down into the ground and just literally tumbling it all together. So worms,
Yep.
roots, that carbon, that the the dead stuff, that the microbes, all that stuff is getting destroyed, right? And we're taking the water right out of it when we're tilling it.
Yep, exactly. So we do I believe in no-till. I do. We did, however, harrow this year, which is a little bit different than tilling because it doesn't go as deep. It only goes, another about 6 inches. It's just, you use machinery for it instead of doing it by hands. So it's pretty nice.
No, I
Oh,
mean, and that's the thing that Thomas. I mean, I can't wait to hear Thomas's response on this. I'd like to open up for Thomas a minute, but again, that's what everybody's talking about, right? The live soil thing. Everybody's going to live soil or real soil. Or how do we feed our worms? That's the biggest thing I tell everybody. I'm like, you can go live soil, but if you don't do it top, if you're not doing any sort of veg for your worms, how are your worms getting fed, right? Like you got to
right.
make it imperative, right? And then there's one thing I want to ask you too, and it's just because I'm thinking about a few different things. It's the compost stuff, right? Have you ever have you used compost? Have you had issues with compost? I mean, a lot of people, me and Tom again have this conversation on hot soil. Can you describe what hot soil is to people?
Hot soil is soil with too much nutrients in it, so that can happen too. You can get nutrient burn from having too much nutrient for a certain plant. Every plant has a different NPK and nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus rating. So you have to kind of dial that in. It's really simple to do. There's at-home tests to test your soil for your NPK. So
Mhm.
there's not really too. I don't know why people have hot soil. I think it's just negligence a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, back going to your point about compost. I love compost tea. I'm a big fan of compost tea, but I buy bottled compost tea. I buy advanced nutrients, organic, OEM certified, organic line, and just the compost tea. That's it. And because it has a better shelf life, I don't have to worry about it going anaerobic. I don't have to worry about all these different factors that you have with making your own compost tea. You got to constantly be testing that. With this stuff, it's kind of scientifically done for me already. And Advanced Nutrients is one of the last like nutrients companies that hasn't been bought out by Monsanto yet. So I,
Right.
I like them. So um, yeah, I love compost tea. Realistically, all we use is like this stuff called biofish. It's basically kelp and fish emulsion, and it's just a powder form of all this stuff. We top dress it into our soil, kind of scrape it in, and let the worms do their work. And we'll feed it with compost tea every other week or so to kind of break down all that organic compound. But yeah, we don't we it's all bacteria for us. We do a lot of compost tea, which is bacteria, fish shit, which is bacteria, the biofish, which is different bacterias and forms of nutrients that help feed your soil in a natural way that you won't have that burn because you're not using chemical nutrients.
Right. I think we've seen a huge
Adam,
switch.
I love that you're using no-till in your hemp plot, and I love that you're using just mainly a compost teas for your applications, because that's one of the easiest ways to maintain a no-till garden. And I mean, there are definitely people that start off on the wrong foot. If you start off with the wrong soil and don't have a properly amended soil to begin with, you're probably going to have a bad time your first couple of years. But as long as the first year you give it a good amendment, the following years after that, a good no-till setup like that, I absolutely love it. The cover crop ideas, I love the garlic idea. A lot of people stick with stuff like clover, but in reality, garlic gives you something to use in the kitchen afterwards. So
Yeah.
I'd much rather use garlic, and it helps ward off the pests. So that's fantastic. I love it.
The pests
Yeah, it's
hate the garlic.
antibacterial and everything else, just like hemp is.
Exactly.
Now that we're on no-till, I just want to just ask one quick question. I got a question here on our messengers, and the question is say you have an established farm right now, right, and you're going to transfer to a hemp farm. Now, we've seen this happen all over the place right now lately, and we've seen some success stories, and we've seen not so great stories.
Mhm.
Say you want to start like basically a no-till, or you're trying to do a regenerative garden, right, where you don't want to take that top layer off, you don't really want to till it down. Is this something you recommend at first when you're converting your crop over to like a hemp field? Is that something that we would recommend and want to look at, or how would we convert from like corn to cannabis? Because I mean, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, where we kind of made a joke about the tomato growers, right? It's a different kind of a thing. And we're seeing a lot of issues with our topsoils, especially out west, right, where it's just drying out. We're losing all of our microbes in our soils. There are just top layers are just depleted, right? Because like you said, once we start hitting it with chemicals and nutrients and all these things that are out there in the markets, it's really killing our soils. That's what people don't get. They're looking at what this crop can get them, but not what in 3 years their farms are going to look like, right?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong too, but corn farmers don't have a cover crop. They kind of chop and just leave it for the winter.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that could definitely be drying out their soil and making it, harsh come springtime. Because once the snow is heavy and compacts and compacts and compacts and compacts, the earth is constantly moving up while the elements are pushing down. That's like the beauty of it. If you're a farmer, you're gonna laugh right now. I had the biggest realization I've had in farming is why so many rock walls exist. And it's because when you dig up and prep your soil every season, no matter what you do, you're gonna have a fuck ton of rocks, and you're in a place that you've prepared for 10 years. You're gonna have a boulder like the size of your body just randomly pop up one day. Why does that happen? Well, the earth is constantly moving up because of the worms pushing up, and everything's decomposing down and up and down and up. Everything's a cycle. um I don't know where I was going with that, but that's important.
When we talk about nitrogen, we're talking about microbes. You talk about all these things that are
Oh,
detrimental. Even carbon, which people don't understand, just for regenerative gardens, right?
and one of
Carbon's
the
a big
most
issue.
important things when you're doing this type of growing is to monitor your pH. That's not talked about enough. We, in the beginning of the season last year, we were like, oh, our plants took off and then they kind of plateaued. What happened? And then we just took a pH and we're like, oh, that's why the soil pH is off. So
Don't get me going on pH.
pH, it's so important, man. Like if we just didn't check throughout the season, we would have had lackluster plants. And we checked, We added some natural organic stuff. It was sulfur. I smelled like fucking rotten eggs for 2 days, and we top dressed everything with it. And after doing that a few times, we were able to fix not only our nitrogen but our pH. We were having a little bit of a nitrogen, not terrible, but a little bit of a nitrogen deficiency and a pH off imbalance completely. That was fucking everything up, and a pH imbalance of the water too. So you got to check the pH of how you're watering it to make sure that it's not too acidic or too alkaline.
Thank you for pointing that out, Adam. I was just pH, as everybody knows on this show, is something I'm like I freak out about because I think 90% of what's on that shelf that you buy as a nitrate is not needed. I hate to say it. We don't need to buy CalMag. Right. Fucking fix your pH, right? Your plant can't uptake calcium at a pH level of, what is it, 6.1 if I remember correctly.
And I think that's what was happening with us because, like I said, it plateaued. So it just kind of like it had some initial growth, which meant the nitrogen was there, and then it basically used up the rest of the nitrogen, was depleted because even though we were feeding in nitrogen, the pH was off, and it wasn't uptaking. So it was useless.
No, Joe, before we get too far, I did want to touch base on that question you had through Messenger. I don't think we actually finished answering that one when they had asked about starting the hemp plot first year for no-till. My personal opinion is test your soil. I like to do 5 to 7 soil samples per acre and just take them out of random different areas, a couple of spots in the corners, a couple of spots throughout the middle, and send them up and have them tested either at UVM or your local soil testing lab. It's not that expensive. I can have 7 tests done for a couple of $100 at the most, but it's totally worth it. I mean, entirely worth it because you know right off the bat what your soil has in it, what you need to add for potassium or phosphorus, or whether or not you're low in calcium for that matter, whether or not you have an excessive amount of clay, or whether you're really high in sand and gravel and need to actually add some clay or maybe some compost to it. So there's definitely a benefit to having your soil tested right off the bat. Once you do that, you may realize that you're good to go on a no-till right the first year, and you can just pick up a broad fork like Adam had there and go to town. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, especially in Vermont, unless you're in Addison County, there's very few places where you're going to be able to just start right off the bat without adding something to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. Like, you know, you have to figure out where you're starting from at first, right? So soil analysis is huge, right? And the continue analysis, kind of like what Adam was saying, you know, like everybody kind of starts off and just lets it go and think everything's going all right, but we're not continually testing our pH. And Adam brought up a great point, ppms in the soil, guys. Mm-hmm. This is one thing that people do not look at. And now, when you go out to buy, let's say, and I hate to say it's about Fox Farm, right? Like Adam brought up a great point. The fucking first thing I thought was Fox Farm, right? Where it's like it's a soil that has so many nutrients. They really kind of designed it so like it's all in there. You know what I mean? At first, that soil is fairly hot, but it'll stretch out for a few months, right? And give you everything you really need. So all you really have to do is just add pH balanced water, right? Some of the other things I see are these nutrient lines that you buy. No one's even reading the label. If you turn that thing around, that nutrient bottle will tell you what pH that bottle's at. So if that bottle is running at like a 6.5 or 7 pH, it's going to raise your pH in certain cases, right? So if you're adding to your soil, if it's a soil additive, or if it's a water, like you said, if it's a compost tea. What I like about the teas.
Advanced nutrients. Advanced nutrients is one of the only ones I've found that boasts the pH balance. Not only the pH balance, like the perfect pH for cannabis, because the Big Mike, who's the owner of it and the face of the company, he says, we never advertised for tomatoes like every other nutrient company did. We advertised for cannabis because we have nutrients for cannabis that have been tested for cannabis. Yep. He's like, so this is the pH is balanced for optimal growing for that plant as opposed to other plants, you know. So that's another, not to make this a giant advanced nutrients ad because they're not paying me nothing yet, but
well, you know, I happen to have my own nutrient line that I'd love to send you to test out, which is a completely different twist on the approach to nutrients, which is it's teas, it's soil additives, it's hydration for your soils, which, you know, looking out west and like I said, watching this documentary the other night, I got excited. You know what I mean? I got really excited because I'm like, this is what we're working on, and here it is right here in front of me being talked about on a major issue, a global issue, right? We're depleting our soils, and you know, for us to get our literally our world back in order, we have to figure out a way to get our soils regenerated. You know what I mean? Get our farms to the fact that we're producing carbon, we're absorbing carbon. The whole cycle is going. It's a cycle that people don't get. Once you take a cog out of that wheel, what happens, right? And I understand that people are doing it for the short-term benefits, but if you really look at the math and you look at the numbers, you can actually make way more money by not following USDA agricultural guidelines and programs, because they're trying to feed you these chemicals, they're trying to feed you these things. It's another political ploy, right? Where it's just no different in politics. Hey, we own this company and you're going to be the only one that can buy it from us, which let's talk about Miracle Grow and Monsanto and all those companies at first, right? We had government support from them, right? And farm acts and bills and stuff like that. So when that happens, what do you do? How do you do? And now everybody's talking about no-till all of a sudden, right? Like, and how do we get no-till? How do we get these applications on a large-scale farm? You know what I mean? Not everybody, there are farms out there that are hundreds of acres. Like, how do we change that over to a cannabis growing farm that's safe, that can continue to grow proper, organic, clean, I like to say clean cannabis or hemp, right? But
so for some farmers, that might require a year of making no money. And that's the hardest thing, right? Because a lot of these farmers, unfortunately, like you said, big agriculture encourages farmers to use these pesticides that are no good for us. And unfortunately, those pesticides linger for a bit. But fortunately for you, hemp is really good at remediating your soil. So, what I recommend for farmers that have traditionally grown corn how the government wants them to grow corn, which is with a ton of pesticides and everything like that, I would probably recommend taking at least a year off. And like we were like Thomas was saying, it's going to require testing of your soil. So you got to start with a base sample in the beginning, see what pesticides are in there, start remediating your soil, and then kind of test and test and test and test from there. Now, maybe
now regionally, I just want to plug one quick thing. Regionally, you guys are going to see differences, right? Like what we see for soil out in the Midwest is going to be different than we see in Canada, right? Or in New England, or even in Seattle, or let's say Alaska, right? And you try to find the places that have the most mineral rich soils. Like we talk about it a lot, right? Where can we find the perfect soil? Where can we find the perfect irrigation? Like we haven't even talked about irrigation yet. Like how do we get
I'm
water
just
to our
learning.
plants? I'm looking at Herban Acres, right? And you it looks like it's in a basically a rural area, right?
Yep.
How do people work on the irrigation on these projects? I mean, there's a bunch of different ways we can do irrigations, right?
Yeah, I would say drip lines are the best. I set up a sprinkler line this year just to try it out, and it works until you're flowering. Like you don't want to be spraying your plant with fucking water directly. It's not a good idea. You're trying to avoid the humidity and trying to avoid the moisture on your buds. So it's not a good look. So my one thing I would have changed this year is to run probably a bigger pump if I could have found it somewhere. It was really hard to find a bigger pump. And I would have ran drip lines, because then you can kind of show up there, turn everything on that you need to, and go do whatever you need to do for 8 to 10 hours, come back, turn it off. And you could even run it like we were running everything off a generator. So you don't need electricity. You just need a little bit of gas. To water like a whole acre, you would probably not even use a full tank of gas on your generator. So the gas cost would be extreme, probably way lower than electricity, honestly.
Let me ask you a quick question. being in the industry, right? This is something that I don't know if a lot of people really understand. So we talk about clean cannabis a lot, right? Clean hemp, clean cannabis. Now there are requirements by this, typically by state now, because obviously we have no federal guidelines right now, but the states in mass, right, they require full panel testing, right? So a lot of these things that we're talking about, can they be picked up through testing?
Yes.
Or is that just with the cannabis side, not necessarily with hemp?
So the 5-panel testing includes cannabinoids, pesticides, heavy metals, residuals, and one other thing on the oil. I don't remember. I don't think there's no 5-panel testing required on the flower, because we're not allowed to sell the flower in Massachusetts, which is ridiculous. that's another story. But so we do the 5-panel testing, which costs about $500 every time that you do a test.
Very expensive.
Very expensive, very expensive. Worth it, definitely worth it. And one of my favorite quotes that I've ever said in my entire life, and I'm gonna probably say it every time that I'm ever on a show like this, is that we use all 3 labs that are in the state because we don't care what the result is. We just care that what we did was accurate and that what we have is safe. That's it.
Right.
I don't care. I don't care about the results. I don't want to fudge it like these companies are doing. That's stupid. That's cheating. I want to know that my shit's better than yours. Like I want to know that it's top of the line, and I want to not cheat at all. And I know for a fact that it can be this way. And again, this is something I repeat often. But what a lot of companies are doing is they're saying, okay, 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams of weight. So if we put 1 gram of oil in there, we have 1,000 milligram bottle. But then you test that 1 gram of oil and it's 70% pure. So then you test out that whole bottle and it's 700 milligrams. So it's 30% short. You're getting gypped 30%. Why does this happen? Because they didn't do math. They didn't look at their lab testing and say, okay, so I need 1.32 grams of oil to make 1,000 milligrams of cannabinoids in this bottle, and then times whatever the batch number that it is. Like I'm just an idiot in my room shooting on Zoom, and I'm able to figure that out. I don't understand why these big companies can't.
Well, they use general. I mean, a lot of it, there really is no base number to start with, right? Unless you do the testing. So it's like everybody's trying to guess on their THC level, their cannabinoid level, and that's so variant between different strains, right? That like you said, you have to test every batch out, which people don't understand. So the smaller you are, the harder it is to get those tests because, like you said, it's $500-$600 for a full panel test, which is required. And if you want to meet that level of knowing what your pesticides and your metals, that's one thing. That's the other thing we haven't talked about yet. It's metals, right? Dr. Uma will come on this show and talk to us about metals all day long and how the effect of metals, and obviously with autisms and other things like that, we see metals are really having an effect with that. Now, what happens in Mass if you run a hot plant? Like, what is that process?
It's not fun. So the first thing I want to show, let's see if it'll pick this up. No, it's adding the background. So I'm looking at our solvents of residuals: propane, isobutane, butane, methanol, pentane, ethanol, acetone, isopropane, acetonetriol, hexane, heptane, all non-detectable in our oil. Then it tests for all the pesticides, all non-detectable in our oil. And then it tests for all the heavy metals, all non-detectable in our oil, except for phosphorus for some reason. That was weird, but it's not one of the pass or fail metals. And then it's 98% pure on the oil. So it's just, if we're able to do this out of a fucking backyard, I don't understand how these big companies aren't doing this with millions of dollars of equipment. Like I will never understand it. It has to be negligence. Has to be. And it's so disappointing. And that's why I'm all about the local movement. Like I support all these local businesses. I don't see people like Healing Rose as competition because we can help each other. There's ways we can work synergistically to help each other grow. And they're here, they're a little bit above us, and we're here. And maybe someday we'll be here and they'll be here. And then we can help bring them a little up to our level and get above us. And we just keep going back and forth. And if you're just helping build other people's buildings up instead of knocking everybody down all the time, you're going to notice way more success, especially in cannabis.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's what we're seeing right now in the industry is a lot of knocking each other down instead of working together, which is really sad. But getting back to that testing issue again, I want I want to make note of this. We're starting to see people go to compost teas, like you said, you pre-buy a tea. A lot of these nutrients, right? This is one of the biggest things I always wanted to question and test was the nutrient bases. You know what I mean? Like even if you get a clean strain and you're using a fucking garbage nutrient system, more likely you're going to run a metal, you're going to run a pesticide. It's something's going to happen, right? You really got to be aware of what you're putting on your plants. Not everything is clean, right? Not everything that says organic on the front is organic on the back, right? It's like a really bad mullet. You know what I mean? Part in the front, all business in the back, or however you say it, right?
I love the companies that call themselves an organic, like put organic in their name, like Bud's Organic Nutrients or something along those lines. And then you look at the back, derived from metal phosphate, blah 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 blah, metal chemical synthetic, blah blah blah. And you see no bone meal, no feather meal, no guano, nothing in there that's actually organic. And you go, how can they even call this organic? Well, because they're not actually calling their product organic. They're misinforming the customer and tricking the customer into thinking it's organic by changing their freaking name.
Goes to that sales.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what I said before. 90% of the nutrients on that shelf do not have to be there. If that one guy told you how to properly pH your water or your soil, or at least take care of the base of what you're growing, it has to be in that soil. If your plant can't take up calcium, which how many people, let's raise a hand here, listeners too, how many people go out and buy calcium every week to give their plants because it's a constant cycle? Then when they give them calcium, they go, oh shit, there's another issue. I don't have enough zinc or phosphorus or magnesium, and then now you're going back and forth, and then your plant is fucking getting ripped apart because it doesn't know which way to go. All its energy is being wasted on trying to uptake these nutrients so they can get to the flowers, and then now you have a really poor producing plant, like you were saying. pH, right? Like, let's talk about this pH. You don't need calcium. You don't need to go buy CalMag. Just lower your pH a little bit. Get below 6. You know what I mean? And you guys are the growers, so tell me if I'm wrong on this, but a lot of these nutrient issues are really kind of, we developed that, right? Like, we're the ones really doing it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you start with a good organic soil to begin with, that's properly full of calcium already and magnesium and all the nutrients that you properly need, throw in some gypsum in there or some Epsom salts, whatever the case may be, to get a properly good soil to begin with. There's no need to do anything other than provide a compost tea and pH your water on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also water too. If people are storing water and letting their water off gas, right? If you're using a town-based system, like, here's something else we should talk about really quick. What do we do about water, guys? I mean, what happens if we're in a town and we're using a town-based system where they're actually chlorinating the water, where they're actually putting fluoride in the water? Is this good for our plants?
No, definitely not. I definitely suggest well water when possible, but I'm sure there's trace amounts of chlorine in everything at this point, and lead and fluoride and all the bad shit that we don't really want or need. But it's something we have to deal with. I would say that if there was a large scale way to make reverse osmosis water, that would probably be best. Except you pull out all the good minerals with that too, so then it hurts there. So it's a constant ebb and flow with your water for sure. I think we honestly got water shipped in from a pool company, pool water, and so they just used town water. And that's what we were using because, like I said, it's a battle. You gotta choose your battles basically, and we don't have a large scale reverse osmosis system, so town water is what we got, and we didn't have $5,000 to build a new well this year, unfortunately. So that's what we had to do.
So what's the best way to get around that? I mean, people talk about letting your water, and this is real, off gas, right?
I haven't heard that before, actually. I haven't heard of that.
So I got you covered on that one. So I'm with Adam on the preference of using well water over any other water. Well water is definitely going to be your best. You're pulling the water that's already in the ground that you're growing in and just providing it back to the top of the soil. It's fantastic.
Full of minerals.
Absolutely. So when it comes to whether or not to use town water, I definitely suggest against it. Luckily, for a lot of us in Vermont, even if you do have to use town water, if you don't know where there's a natural spring nearby, you might know a friend who knows where there's a natural spring within 20 miles of your house, where you can just go and there's a metal pipe just sticking out of the ground on the side of the road, and you just pull over and fill up a couple of buckets and bring it home. It's totally awesome. Worth it, and definitely my preference if you can't get well water. In the event you do have to use town water, Reverse osmosis is a good option, but again,
Well,
as Adam said, you lose all the beneficials out of the water. And off-gassing, as Joe suggested, would be just leaving your water out to sit for about 24 hours, let it get a little bit of sun, and allow the chlorine to actually escape the water on its own. Unfortunately, that doesn't help get rid of some of the other things that can be nasty, like high amounts of lead or fluoride, for instance, in town water.
Now, if you're we're talking about farming on this, but if you're somebody that's a home grower out there, something that I did when I was home growing was I would fill up my jugs of water at like one of those spring water stations, like, so I'm not using town water anymore. It's a little bit more filtered, but it's still got all the minerals and everything in there from spring water.
Absolutely.
So that's something you should do, because I mean, a problem that I see in farming and a problem that I see in home growing is overwatering. So, you should be able to afford watering 12 plants in your house with like your local spring water provider for 25 cents a gallon. And at the same token, you shouldn't be spending a ton of money on watering if you do have a rainy season, especially. Like last year, we barely watered, honestly, barely.
As long as your soil is prepped properly, it's not really necessary if you get a couple of good rains.
Yep.
It's definitely beneficial to add a drip system and stuff and add the additional water for
Just
the dry
in case.
days and a few weeks there that get some pretty hot weather. But when it comes down to it, I've had plenty of farmers that work with no-till gardens that are happy to just allow the rain to do their thing. And they still receive a pretty decent crop as long as the soil is prepped properly to absorb and retain the water for them.
Yep.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I mean, it's huge, and then you have to talk about, like you were saying, Adam. It's in Thomas. It's very different when you go from home grow to an outdoor grow. And it gets even different when you go from an outdoor grow to an industrial size grow, right? To get water, irrigation, make sure that you don't have runoff when it does rain. That your soil can actually absorb that water and utilize it. That way, you don't have to go out there and provide these systems for it. And we've seen a lot of that in Vermont, even with our high moisture contents, is drip lines, right? I mean, people are running drip lines everywhere just to make sure, we do have stretches where we're not going to get water to these plants, right? Or it's just going to be so hot that there's going to be the soil is just going to dry out because they're in bags and stuff like that. So we're pushing time here, guys. This is a great conversation. I don't really want to disrupt it. I mean, we've talked about a lot of things today, which is really cool. You know what I mean? And a lot of things that people don't really normally talk about. We're talking about phosphates and irrigations and chemicals and pHs and things that, a lot of people, I think, miss on this stuff. That really, like you were saying, brings you to when you start going back and forth with a nutrient fight with yourself, not understanding what's going on with your plant, and you go into a grocery store, and you tell the guy, oh, this is what my leaves look like. He goes, oh, you need zinc, you know what I mean? And they sell you a product that 90% of it's garbage because, sometimes your plant can only absorb such a little bit amount of it. And again, like you said, proper pH levels are really what's critical. It's the acid levels is where the plant will cut off its absorption on certain things, right?
Yep.
And just like, terps and burn offs and all that stuff, it all has different levels. We're going to take a quick pause right now. We're going to invite Tim on. He's been sitting here awful quiet. I think he's the only one that hasn't spoke a word yet.
I'm learning. I'm soaking it in. I can't grow grass, so I love the opportunity to kind of learn from the people who know what they're doing. That's just one of the best things about being on the show. I learn so much every week.
That's awesome.
And, it is amazing. Like I said, guys, there's so many tricks to the trade. Coming from a culinary background with Chef Rodney, we all talk about it every week. We're going to say it again. There's 900 ways to cook an egg, right? It's just depending on how you want to get there. And again, we can't say this enough. If your egg is garbage, your scrambled egg is going to be garbage, right? So we talked about genetics earlier. We talked about proper seeds, and we've seen, this last year, I don't think I've seen so many issues with genetics. You know what I mean? And even from some of the top quality guys, you know what I mean? I know people very close to us that have had issues with trying to stress plants, herming them out, and then what happens then? We lose grows, we lose rooms. It's like you said, if we get a male in the middle of the field that we don't find fast enough, next thing you know, your whole fucking field seeded, right? And then that being said too, your neighbor right next to you, if he's being an asshole and he's not checking his shit, you're gonna get fucked, right?
Not even just your neighbor fucking 5 miles down the road. If the right wind hits,
Yep.
Woo, they're gonna fuck your whole farm up.
Bees too. The
Right?
bees will pick up that pollen and carry it miles.
I suggest
mean-
you know your neighbors, right? So that way they will willingly let you inspect whatever plants they are growing.
Yeah.
And again, go like I want giving, right? I'm always about giving. So give them free advice on how to grow better weed. Give them better genetics so that way it doesn't put your crop at risk. And they'll be willing to let you come check out their crop and make sure it's not herming and mailing out and screwing up your whole crop. Just some words of advice.
Now, with that being said, right, perfect segue right back into Tim at Vermont Cannabis Solutions here. What happens if this happens, right? You know, we're seeing all these different things on insurances. We're seeing all these different things on what we can do. The FDA is consistently talking about what's being covered, what's not, right? And now, you know, now we have coronavirus relief, right? If I read that correctly this week, let me know what's going on, Tim. How you doing, buddy?
Good. We've had a busy, exciting week this week. I'm sure, as you know, as far as Vermont's going in terms of just a mind-blowing progression on our tax and regulate bill, which is just a month ago, I would have said we would have never been where we're at. So that's been kind of dominating our time. But USDA coming out saying that hemp again can be insured. We know this. Insurance companies don't have to. That's the thing. They're not mandated to. And well, you know, we talked a little bit about this last week. It's very challenging for them to come up with a scheme in order to insure. There is some COVID relief now available. $15 an acre is what the USDA is willing to give for COVID. So for us here in Vermont, where people grow 10 and 15 acres, isn't that sweet? You know, hey, it's something. It's good. Every step towards normalization. We always talk. Obviously, I would like to see something a little more realistic for our hemp growers. You know, $15 an acre is, you know, is a joke. But hey, again, it is something.
Right. Well, that's it. It's better than nothing.
15 a plant would be nice. You know, that's a little more realistic in terms of what can and be doable. But no, it's you know, things are good. You know, see, every bit of normalization, every time a federal agency acknowledges the cannabis industry, every time the cannabis industry becomes available to something that's previously was shut out, that's great. And very little incremental steps, baby steps. You know, we always talk about the House passing these resolutions. While there's no immediate impact or direct impact, it is a step towards normalization, towards getting, you know, John and Jane Doe to realize that cannabis is an industry. It's a medicine. It is a force that's here. It is not something to be feared. It's not something to be outlawed. It's not something that people should be incarcerated or punished for. And everything that gets us closer to that is a great thing.
Yeah, it's and then that leads us kind of right into the Vermont thing where we're at, right?
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Like you said, it's been a crazy week. We're seeing a lot of different feelings about this, right? Good and bad. You know what I mean? A lot of people are really pro, and then, you know, some of these guys are really against it. You know, every week we kind of bring it up again. And where do we sit this week? I mean, last week was a very exciting week. Really, it was, right?
We saw the bill come out of conference committee, which was exciting. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Then we saw the House vote and pass it easily, which was also very exciting. Today, obviously, the Senate was a rubber stamp, and now it's heading to Governor Scott's desk with a lot of good kind of winds, a good wind blowing. You know, and it's a shame that a lot of people who are against this bill, are against it for other reasons. Or don't understand it, or didn't read it, or heard something online, or saw something on social media, and took that to heart. You know, the people who I've had a chance to talk to about this, who are actually willing to sit down and learn, are almost all of them very surprised when they find out about what the bill really is about, especially when it comes to corporate, you know, big corporate interests. You know, with this kind of disinformation campaign that went out about it being a corporate sellout, a corporate bill, and we're going to hand the Vermont cannabis. The bill limits any one entity to one license. What corporation is interested in one dispensary or one grow license? No. You know, after the 2018 collapse of the stock prices in the last year, collapse of MedMen, the collapse of Iantis, these corporations are looking for 20 dispensaries in Florida. They're looking for 15 in New York. You know, Massachusetts definitely had a very big impact. Nobody wants one single dispensary in Vermont. But it's fantastic for people like you, me, all of us, the small business, the small entrepreneur, because it's not going to be inaccessible. You don't need $500,000 in the tank the way this bill is written. You need a spot, you need a space, you need some basic security, but the costs are going to be reasonable. $100,000 is enough to be able to start up an adult use dispensary as things are right now. Of course, we have a cannabis control board to form. There's going to still be a lot of decisions that need to be made at that level. But that's fantastic because that's a level at which I can get up there, my partner Andrew and I, advocates, any of us can go in front of this board and convince them of what needs to be done and why, which is a hell of a lot easier than trying to get anything through the legislature. So the fact that we're here, the fact that we're about to get over the finish line, is it a perfect bill? No. Are there some ridiculous provisions? Absolutely. Are we going to start on day one working to tweak and change what needs to be? Absolutely. But the point is we'll be able to do so. No more people getting arrested for growing medicine. I can't even, I'm beside myself. I think I told you last week, this case we picked up, a paraplegic up in rural Vermont, growing 15 plants for his own medicine because he can't get to a dispensary, raided by sheriffs with automatic weapons while his caretakers, 6 and 9-year-olds, are in the house. I mean, this is insanity. It's insane. And I'm going to be really happy when we can put that part of history behind us. When people can get small scale craft cultivation licenses and grow up to 1,000 square feet worry free. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Well,
craft licenses are going to be great. I'm sure 1,000 square feet. I'm sure you can do a lot with 1,000 square feet.
I think people once the system gets rolling, it's kind of like what we saw in Mass, and it's great to have Adam on this conversation. I was actually really looking forward to having this conversation with Adam and Tim, because Adam, if people don't know, Adam, Herban Acres is based out of Mass, right? So they work within Mass guidelines. Now, the Mass regulatory systems use a cannabis control board, right? Now, Adam, this is the one thing that everybody kind of like hems and haws over, is having a cannabis control board. You've been working in the system now for a little while. What are the pros and cons of the cannabis control board? Like, what are these states? What we should be looking at for states that are looking to go and push legalization? Should they be using control board? Should they put it into an agriculture department? Should it be attached to the DOJ like it is in Vermont? You know what I mean? What are the pros and cons of that control board for you?
You're still muted, Adam.
It seems like the control board kind of slows down the process a wee bit. Like it's I don't know if it's a tone deaf thing or what, but majority of the people on the board just don't seem for us. It seems like they're for the big corporations. But I definitely would not entrust it in the hands of the DOJ.
And has not done a good job with the medical program here. I'll tell you right now.
No, they haven't done a good job with their own department, but so
department that hates the program in charge of it. That works real well.
Right, like the department that has locked people up unjustly for many, many decades is now going to be in charge of it. That doesn't make sense. But the Department of Agriculture also, I don't know if it's just my experience of being licensed through the Department of Agriculture, but they're just very by the books. So, we had a conversation about this 0.3% number, which is, if you don't know, what they call marijuana and what they call hemp are literally the same plant. They are both cannabis. There is no difference between how they grow or anything like that. The only difference is the amount of cannabinoid concentration inside of each.
An arbitrary amount of cannabis concentration.
Exactly.
It's just no science or anything.
Well, there's science. It's based off one. It's one study from one scientist from one plant from like 50 years ago. So there's science, all right? There's science. But it's governmental limitations on what they are. And what the limitation is 0.3%. So if there's more than 0.3% THC, 0.300000000 across the board THC, by the way, and I'll tell you a story about that in a second. We had a conversation about that, and I said, I think that's kind of a ridiculous number. I think it should be 1%. I think 1% is a good number to start at, and I think that the A form shouldn't count, because as much as you could say it's 87.7% conversion rate, it's not perfect every time. So Right. Where I was going, fucking stoner brain, man.
Well, I mean, no. Well, you're talking about the 1% real quick, and that's like exactly what I wanted you guys to get to, because we've seen some countries utilize 1%, right? And you know, we talked to Tim about it before.
Not even countries, states, dude. Y'all are 1% in Vermont.
Yep.
Yep. No. Yep.
Now, you know, Oregon, you know, the states that actually grow hemp. No, that 0.3 total is ridiculous. It's unworkable. It's impossible. It's meant to kill the industry.
But MDAR agrees with it. So Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, the people representing it at least agree with it completely. I agree. If it's over 0.3, that's now marijuana, and they should get charged for drug trafficking. And the reason that's so ridiculous is because we failed on a quarter of our crop this last year. And we failed our THC consumption. Our THC total concentration was this. Ready? 0.305. So for 0.005 over, non-detectable by most equipment, we had to burn a quarter of our crop.
That's the problem.
No. Let me ask you. Sorry, guys. I got really excited about that one right there. Anyways. Well, no, this is the one thing that no one talks about. What the fuck happens when that crop goes what we consider hot, right? Like, and you said it could be 0.000000005. It's considered hot, right?
Yep.
What is the? I mean, I know every state has a little bit different system, but what is it for you guys? You just burn it, like,
yep.
That's it. You just have to destroy it.
You got to destroy it, and not only burn it, but you got to do it in front of them.
Right.
You got to schedule a burn.
But would they get high because it's 0.00005 over the legal limit?
We're burning marijuana. We're putting all the children in the neighborhood in danger.
Right, the children in the neighborhood never been so quiet and never felt so good. They're just
wow, my child's ADD has been really great. I don't know why.
But I mean, no,
there's something in the water. No, we don't use city water for this.
I mean, for a while here in Vermont, right, Tim, like it would go back to our dispensaries, right? They would take it, they would either do something with it, but it would have to go to the dispensary to be taken care of.
It doesn't have to go to the dispensary, go to any lab, it could be remediated.
There we go.
Original.
Dude, I'd love for them to pay even $100 a pound for our hot stuff, you know, like that. They're getting cheap stuff, super cheap. They can make it into oil and whatnot, and because they make CBD products too, you know. I mean, let's be honest, it's basically.
Well, now if we bring in the FDA regulations and the DEA stuff and all these things they're talking about, everything we just talked about is illegal, right? I mean, how hard is it to meet these guidelines? How hard is it to make sure that final product is going to stay within that guideline, right? Especially
almost
with
impossible.
You're right. Me and Tim have been laughing about it since they reported it, right? It's just something that if this gets pushed past, where does that put our industry, right? Where does that put the Delta 8 that we're now starting to see a submergence of on our markets, and what's that entail? You know what I mean? Because it's still, like we talked about before, there's so many gray little areas that seems like they purposely put there. You know what I mean? It's kind of like those little pocket things that they can pull when they need to, you know. What happens then? You know what I mean? What are you facing as a company, Adam? You know, if the DEA and the FDA get these rules pushed through, and what does that do for our industry? Or is it just going to crush this industry completely?
It's got me really shying away from processing. I will tell you that much. That's for damn sure, because they're basically trying to say that once it's processed, it becomes marijuana, and I'm like, this is fucking stupid. So you're telling me, once I have scientifically stripped at least 90% of the cannabinoids off the plant after running it for 2 different times, you're telling me that now it's hot. now it's hot. That's not how that works. That's not how fucking science works, man. Like, I'm not even that smart. I barely understand science. I can talk. But
I will tell you, the law firm we're affiliated with, Hoban Law, in conjunction with Vicente Cederberg, have just filed a lawsuit against the DEA.
Yes.
We're actually in on the conference call on it.
Yeah.
So that's really, exciting. At least we're fighting back. That is illegal position that the DEA has taken. We do not agree that they have the regulatory authority to be able to make that statement. We're gonna let the courts decide ultimately.
Dude, Rodney,
really talented, way smarter than many lawyers on this case. And,
we got Rodney.
Exciting to see what happens.
Huh? I got a question for you, Tim. How is that not entrapment?
Well, entrapment's kind of a legal theory. It's a little tricky to explain. That's when a police officer sets up a situation in which somebody would normally not.
So hang on, right there. A police officer set up a situation knowing the outcome because he knew what you were going to do, right?
Well, the DA isn't a police officer; they're an administrative body, so it's a little different. Unfortunately,
Lupo.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I know. I'm with you. I agree. It's bullshit.
Absolutely, but it's at the same
and the
time,
question, of course, they come out immediately and like, "Well, we're not enforcing this. We just are saying blah blah blah." But it goes against what the Agricultural Improvement Act says, the Farm Bill of 2018.
As you're lighting your hot shit on fire in front of them, we're not enforcing this, but it's on fire, so you are. So you're lying. You're an idiot.
Now let me ask you guys a question real quick though. If we can raise this level to 1. If we can raise this level to 1,
we could do so much more.
Where does the DEA and FDA recommendations fall in line? You know what I mean? Can we operate at that 1% instead of the 0.3?
So it needs to be
more reasonable too.
It needs to be 1% with a percent for consideration of remediation. So there are many different remediation factors that come into play once you're making oil. So if your final product is not the flower, what the fuck does it matter what the flower is? My final product, we don't sell any hemp flower, 0. Our hemp flower looks beautiful. We can't sell it in Massachusetts because of the stupid guidelines. We're not allowed to sell any hemp flower in the state. I could probably sell it in Connecticut perfectly fine. Like it's they wouldn't even care. Just like they told us we could sell seeds in Connecticut to regular citizens, but not in Massachusetts. It's just all fucking. I don't mean to go on rants like that, but it's really annoying that, like, so for us being in the malls, we were in the malls. We're a Massachusetts company. We're licensed by Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. And down the hall, like 150 yards from us, there's another CBD company from Canada. And they're able to sell edibles. They're able to sell hemp flower. They're able to sell every single product that we're not allowed to sell because we are actually licensed. And there are no retail licenses for CBD in Massachusetts.
No retail.
No retail. So anybody you see selling stuff has no obligation to your safety, essentially.
Massachusetts stuck to the FDA rule very, very strictly. That's a huge difference. And when you say, like, when you talk about Department of Agriculture, they're not the same state to state, because our Department of Agriculture is about 180 degrees in every single direction. Not one crop has ever been destroyed. Not one, CBD is fine to put into food. No problem selling it. They work with the industry. They're fantastic. And Joe, when people talk about having our cannabis, industry governed by the Department of Agriculture, we love that. In an ideal world, if I could rub a lamp and have Jeannie pop out and have Terry Guar and Stephanie Smith overlooking the illegal cannabis industry, I'd be dancing a jig in the street. The problem is it's unrealistic. It would never happen because legislatively we have opponents and there has to be compromise. And no opponent of cannabis is going to let an agency with no real regulatory experience or enforcement arm or enforcement division overlook this. It would be great, but it's so unrealistic that it's not even an option. But getting the medical program out from public safety and putting it under this Cannabis Control Board, that is. We've got to, we have to put some faith into the Vermont system, into our transparency laws, into our public accommodation laws, and into the fact that it's an appealable board. So any decision they make can be appealed. Yes, it's the lawyers who are going to be doing it, but you know what? It'll be me. It will be Andrew. It'll be the people who really give shit about this industry in this state will be the ones in front of this. And we will be challenging things that aren't right. It's a lot easier of a process than Massachusetts just has so much red tape that bureaucracy is just, but it's inevitable when you have a state of millions of people and you've got a major metropolitan city like Boston. One of the kind of good sides about living in the middle of nowhere here in Vermont is that procedures and processes are a lot easier. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot simpler. We don't have an appellate level of courts. We don't have 3 levels of bureaucracy and middle management to get through. It's not enough people. We've got one. That's it. And then we go to the Supreme Court. And it's that, so that does give an advantage under the Vermont scale. Is it perfect? No. Is it going to work? I do believe so. Is it going to have problems? Of course. Every system does. You can't implement this and expect it to be perfect overnight. Massachusetts is kind of a little bit of a shit show, but they ain't California.
You got to get used to
No, not at all.
Put in the door before you
Look
get
out
in the
there,
light.
you know, you got 3 levels of regulation. You got county regulation, you got state regulation, you got town regulation. You know, I mean, it's like, hey, that's just insane. So, you know, it always could be better, but it certainly always could be worse. And I really do have a lot of faith that if Governor Scott lets this become law, we are going to have a incredibly successful, incredibly craft-oriented, and incredibly small business-oriented cannabis industry here in Vermont.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
excited
excited for
really
it.
am.
Now, let me ask you a quick question. I mean, we're all like state to state, here, this, that. We're all like struggling. What about the Canadian market? Do we have anything to learn from the Canadian market, who seem to be doing it for 2 years without? I mean, we're not in this market, so obviously we're not as well sped up to issues and concerns and stuff like that. But from an outside looking in, is there anything that we can learn?
They did it opposite of us. They legalized it federally, and then allowed each of their individual provinces to go ahead and set up their own regulatory schemes based on what worked best for them. And they had a rough rollout, and they're, you know, oh, this sucks. It's a year and a half in. You know, if it hadn't been for COVID, I'd be up in Montreal a lot more often. You know, from when I first went to the dispensary, first month they opened in 2018 versus last winter, it was night and day, you know, and that was well done. Again, there are issues, there are problems, but you know, I think that they were able to implement it more uniformly, where we still have now states where you can go into a store and buy it, and you have states right next door where you can be charged with a felony and put in prison. That creates this just unworkable situation. So that's why, you know, it would be nice to have some federal change. But, you know,
No, definitely. Now, one quick question. You know, we just talked about Canada. Now, I want to bring this up. You know, this last week, we saw, oh, come on, Oracle, let's go. We saw the UK, right? So the UK's medical cannabis companies are now eligible for listing on the stock exchange, right? We're talking about national support. We're talking about bank support. We're talking about all this stuff. Now, to be on the stock exchange, don't you kind of need all this wrapped up in one? And is this something that's going to be good for us going down the road globally to see the UK start this?
Well, I mean, they're not really starting it. You got Canopy Growth on the New York Stock Exchange. Aurora is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. You know, multiple cannabis companies are traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange, the CSE. I mean, that's really nothing new. It's new to Britain, which is great. I mean, they've had a real, you know, fight over CBD and medical, and you know, so they're, you know, that's moving forward there. I don't, you know, so what's a stock exchange mean? It means a bunch of rich people can buy stock that no normal people can afford and make money off it. Wonderful, great, Yahoo. It's a way to get capital for these companies, but it's also a way to rip a lot of people off. A lot of these companies are scams. Again, I'm not into the corporate marijuana thing. I just am not. I don't think it's the right way to go about it. I don't think our systems are set up for it properly. I think that's an opportunity for a lot of people to lose a lot of money. I mean, people made a lot of money on Canopy Growth. They were really lucky. A lot of people lost a lot of money on MedMen. A lot, you know, they thought, you know, the retail investors, they think they could throw $5,000 and make $1 million off it, not understanding that, you know, these companies, none of them are profitable. Aurora just announced one of the top 3 largest cannabis companies lost $3.4 billion right down last year. That's losses. Now everybody's saying once they get you know, federal legalization and the United States market opens up, it's going to blow up, and to an extent that's true. But right now, as far as I know, there's only one profitable multi-state operator, and that's Trulieve, who's based primarily in Florida. And they just were smart and got about 50% of the market share of Florida's medical program. Florida has about a little over 300,000 medical patients. That's a program that works compared to our 5,000 patients. You know, so I mean, being on a stock exchange is good. Again, it's one of those things towards normalization. Another step, people see it, they stop, they get over the stigma. It helps them get over the stigma. That's wonderful. But you know, another avenue for a bunch of already rich people to make more money. You know, I'm much more interested in the small mom and pop operations, Magic Man, BTV Local, Mansfield Provisions, all of the small Vermont companies that we've worked with and started. Those are the ones I'm excited to see make money. And they're not
great companies doing the right thing, that have done it the right way, and they're producing great products, just like Herban Acres, right? Small companies are doing the right thing. They're trying to hold integrity in an industry that really doesn't have much, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but I say that gently. We all have a couple stories we could tell, I'm sure. Now, with that all being said, though, we're looking at the MORE Act, right? And what happened this week in the MORE Act? It looks like it got delayed, right? The the moderator kind of just pumped the brakes up on it, right? So where do we stand on this MORE Act deal? I mean, I know we were kind of excited about it. Do we see it getting past Mitch in the House, in the Senate? I mean, probably not. But where are we at right now, Tim, with this?
It was first, if we vote on marijuana before we get a COVID recovery bill and get money into the people who have been laid off and, have lost their jobs, that the optics aren't going to look good on that. That was the original thing. Now it's just such sort of self-service interest in getting a new Supreme Court justice appointed, that anything that's good for people, fuck that. We've got to worry about, our legacy and conservative. Our federal government's a fuck. It's broken. I mean, it's broken. That's really, really, it's broken. It's a broken system. And the MORE Act is fantastic. It was a great act. It was a great idea. It would have passed the House. That would have been rah-rah. It never would have gotten called for a vote in the Senate anyway. Now being delayed is actually a good thing. Let the election happen. Let's see what happens. Let's get Mitch McConnell buried 95 feet under the ground. And let's get a Senate Majority Leader in who will call it when it passes the House. Let's get this last bastion of these prohibitionists, just people that just don't get it, and they need to be gone. And until that happens, we're not going to see change. But this election could do it. This election really, really could do it. It could cause civil war, or it could get cannabis passed. We just don't know. It's interesting times we live in, I tell you.
I mean, you brought up something I really kind of want to ask you about all week. So, ever since we saw Ruth Bader, unfortunately, rest in peace to her. As a big loss this week, especially for the Supreme Court. What does this have any effect on anything in what's happening with cannabis right now? Could this be something that could take an effect somehow?
Not directly, but indirectly. You know what I mean? It's not, cannabis is nothing that's coming to the United States Supreme Court. Yeah, I mean, there's been some issues on determination, and there could be a case that gets brought up. They've never granted cert to one, still federally illegal. But it's the ancillary stuff. It's like, can you be fired from a job for being a medical marijuana patient? That's a really good question that could potentially be decided by at the Supreme Court level. Can a contract be enforced between two cannabis companies, state legal and federal court, because it's federally illegal? So it's a lot of the ancillary things, not so much legalization. That's going to be dealt with by the legislature, but it's all these questions that have no real open answers. For example, the lawsuit I was just talking about that got filed against the DEA, that could theoretically make it up to the United States Supreme Court. And what's interestingly enough is this is not straight liberal and conservative. There's a lot of Republicans and conservatives that support legalization. They support it for states' right purposes. They support it for the revenue. And there's a lot of left and Democrats who are opposed because of, oh my God, the children, and this ridiculousness. So it's not directly a partisan issue as much, but morality is where I get scared. And what they're talking about now is this new Supreme Court justice is going to be an absolute devout Catholic Christian, to the point of the male heads the family and the wife is submissive. And it is crazy, crazy religious bullshit. That's where I see, that's where the moral majority comes in. That's where the moral imperative not to allow intoxicating substances. That could be a problem. That could be a real serious problem because Samuel Alito is a religious zealot, and Clarence Thomas is a religious zealot, and another religious zealot on the Supreme Court. We're going to start to see that whole church-state thing go away, and that does not bode well for cannabis. That does not bode well for anything, really.
Right. No, it doesn't. Yes, I had a great conversation with Leo Bridgewater the other day. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Leo. He's a vet. He's a huge advocate for the medical minorities for medical marijuana. We're talking to him the other day, and he just point blank asked me. He's like, with this passing of Ruth, what happens when somebody from the military, like you said, puts a lawsuit against the government, right? For what he was saying was his rights for cannabis usage amongst the military. Now we've seen the proposal for for these guys to be able to leave and then be able to use cannabis and then be able to be reinstated back into the military through a process, right? Which wasn't able to be before, but we still don't have the ability to have our vets consume any sort of cannabis. Is this one of those situations where some veterans should be concerned or military people should be concerned because it's going to end up because it could end up in a Supreme Court issue?
Again, the Supreme Court doesn't make law. They interpret laws. So they're not going to pass anything. It would be executive branch, the DOD, the Department of Defense that would make that policy. But it's challenges to that policy, yes, and that is something that's to be very concerned about. If a veteran was to say, bring a lawsuit that say that they have a fundamental right to use whatever medicine works best for them, that is very well a issue that could go to the Supreme Court. That the Supreme Court could rule, no, you have no right to use an illegal substance. It's not a medicine.
Yeah,
so that yes, it is something to be concerned about, but again, not directly. Supreme Court doesn't set policy, but when those policies get challenged, that they are the final arbiter. But you have to remember too, the Supreme Court takes, there's thousands of lawyers that try to get their cases in front of the United States Supreme Court every year, and they only take a very, very, very small majority, anywhere from 20 to 30, maybe 40 cases. Not many out of the 1,000 or 2,000 that apply. It's called the process called certiorari. So that very well they may just not take up anything involving cannabis. It's really, really hard to tell. It's really but it's not good. I'm telling you right now, religious zealots on a judicial bench, or the ultimate judicial bench, is not good. Decisions cannot be made by invisible spiritual mythology. It needs to be made by the law. It needs to be made for what's good for the people and following the law, following the Constitution. That's what we are. When you start letting Jesus make your decisions for you, not you, but the entire country, look in history. It never ends well. It never ends well.
Listen, those people that say, let Jesus take the wheel, let them do that.
Yeah, just not for the country.
Let them do that, okay?
It's not how things like education.
Handle that situation for us. You feel me? That's just
All right, that's my rant.
Yeah,
right.
And you're not wrong. And it's just like, how more oxymoronic could we make this? You know what I'm saying? Oh, we'll never do that, and then it's the first thing they do. Oh, I'll never lie to you. 15 reasons why I just lied to you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, come on, guys. How are you not seeing this? It's a dog and pony show.
Yep.
Okay, so whatever they tell you, think the exact opposite, because that's actually what's fucking happening.
No, it's well, I mean, like we said a lot of times in Vermont, when everybody used the DUI, the driving under influence kind of scapegoat. It's kind of like, you nod and say yes because you have that ace in your pocket that you can just slap down the table and wipe it all out, because like, oh well, you can't pass this, so I'll let you do this, and this, because that's cool, but you're never going to figure out this answer to this problem, right? So they don't care, and they let you go, and they let you go, and they let you go, which creates,
they're banking on you not knowing what's law and what's not. That's what it is.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's so many hypocritical. You guys have all hit it on the head today. I mean, how many hypocritical situations do we get involved with where they?
And how is that not entrapment? That's really what I want to know.
Well,
I'm sorry, like Tim, like I'm not accepting that answer. I love you, boy. I love you so much, but no, any way you fucking look at it, it's rigged, and goddamn well it is.
It's wrong. I mean, there's no question about it. As a criminal defense attorney, I'm really familiar with the legal concept of entrapment.
Yeah,
that's different from the standard definition. And yes, it's bullshit. I mean, there's no question about it. But you wouldn't be able to argue that in a court of law, unfortunately.
No. Because they're stacked against it. They knew that's your only defense. You could use that as potential defense, so they stack against it. That's premeditation if I've ever heard about it.
Right. I mean, they've already planned it in the way they designed it to put you in a court and have the answers right there, so a judge can say yes or no, or have that gray area enough that they can make that decision on their own. You know what I mean? Without what's right, what's wrong. That's up to the judge, right? And that's kind of how they read and foresee these laws, and then how you apply to that, right? There's a lot of crazy things going on, which is crazy. Like Tim said, there's a lot of people going after the government now. They're filing lawsuits. Normal did it. There's been a couple private companies that have filed against the government, the DEA, for their stipulations and just trying to get the shit. I mean, all we're asking is that these guys to get the guidelines done, to get the rules in place, give us structure so we know how to work, right? It's not like we're trying to battle or fight the system. It's not like we're trying to, like, there's so many companies trying to do the right thing, like Adam, right? But like Adam says, even in Massachusetts, it's a fucking crapshoot. You know what I mean? It seems like every day there's a new issue caused by nothing. Nothing, really, nothing. It's legal.
Our tax dollars as citizens of the United States go to pay their salaries, and they're not doing their fucking jobs. Plain and simple.
Right, but I mean, you could argue that point. They could be doing their job for one side or the other, right? I mean, that's the argument, and then they're one person in place to make that decision for X amount of people, right?
Correct.
How do you make that decision? Most of these guys are not educated in this. I had a great conversation with Leo. He'll be on next week. No, next week is Ganj father. 2 weeks. So he'll be on 2 weeks. It was a great conversation because it was exactly about this. You know what I mean? When you ask these questions, you try and get these answers. These guys do not know. Me and Tim bring this up all the time. We thought about this last year. You guys are talking to politicians that have 400 other bills on their desk that they have to look at, right? And they're literally asking us to take the time to go into their office, sit down with them and educate them. But too many people would rather troll their asses on the internet. And just like what we're seeing with S54, this bill's garbage, this bill's garbage, this bill's garbage, this bill's garbage. Who wants to sit down and talk about it? Who wants to go into the state house and talk to a representative? Now, it's not easy. I'm not going to say you guys are just going to walk in and sit down with a guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to take a while to get there, but we forget they have 400 other bills. Most of these guys do not have assistants, right? They try to do it all themselves. So the little bit of research they get is, whatever is directly handed to them by one side or the other, right? We're seeing this in Vermont. We've seen it in Mass. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of people who go against legalization, right? We're seeing it all over even on a federal level, right? And that guy, as much as we want to say we're paying their salary, they're working for us. They're working for everybody. So they have to listen to both sides of the situation. Now, if you're not going to go in there and educate them as much as the other side is, what do you think is going to happen? Where do you think it was going to happen? You know what I mean? When we first started this legalization thing a couple of years ago, we're literally in the state house and they're using like Alaskan models. And you're like, who the fuck gave you this model? You know what I mean? Like probably one of the worst models to kind of base our model off of, right? And then they're just talking like numbers, and the numbers they're seeing are all the losses and revenue, and I'm sure Tim will I forget how it was exactly said, but literally Vermont was like, we're not going to make any money doing this. So they just literally ran the numbers and they're like, we're not going to make any money. Alaska didn't make any money. We're not going to make any money. And I'm like, well, look at Mass, look at Illinois, look at all these other states that are clearing billions of dollars because they just set it up slightly different, right?
I think I read somewhere Michigan's at $4 billion this year.
Yeah,
or something like that. Like it's so Michigan has become the East Coast's Colorado. We're right there. It's
well, you're gonna see every market flourish once we start
absolutely.
the legalization process to get close. I mean, look at Maine, look at Oklahoma now. Are these systems proper and great and perfect for everybody? No. Is it the Wild West out there in some places? Yeah, still, you know what I mean?
I have a question about the $4 billion. Does Flint, Michigan have clean water yet?
No.
No.
You're absolutely right.
All right,
No,
just
you're
checking.
absolutely right.
Just
That's
checking.
my point. So it's like, I mean, it's here in Michigan. Yes, no, we're still very angry about Flint. We're not happy about that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, it really depends on which side of the fence you talk to, if you will. I'm on the side of the fence going, what the fuck happened? You know what I mean? And so, I'm right there with you. So no, that's on the list. But it's like Tim was saying earlier, man. Yeah, you got to get your foot in the door before you can turn the light on. You feel me? So it's like you gotta get to that point and eat crow and bust your ass to get to that point. Cool, but then you got to go even further. You know what I'm saying? And that's absolutely right. Michigan, yeah, you're dropping your feet. You're dragging some feet on some important shit, and we need to figure it the fuck out because honestly, right now, it ain't right. I mean, yeah, we're making a lot of money in cannabis, but we're also hemorrhaging money too. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's I wouldn't say the Wild West. It's a very competitive market. It's I wouldn't say cutthroat, but a lot of snakes in the grass, and you find that out real quick.
You're talking about Michigan personally. I was more focused on Oklahoma and a couple of these other states where they're just
blowing up.
Yeah, it's just green and everyone's puts on the gas.
Oh yeah.
No one's looking in the rearview mirror.
That's it. They're going one way.
Right?
Speeding. Foot on the throttle.
They just slammed a cinder block on it and was like, let's just go.
And just jump out the car and watch that thing go General Lee that thing, right?
But at the same time, like I want to see the fallout from this. You know what I mean? I want to see I either want to see it flourish or I want to see the fallout. I like dystopian future shit, so this might be cool. You don't know.
Right?
Dystopian future shit, he said.
Well, I mean, we're talking about messed up markets, right? Let's talk about California real quick. So about 3 hours ago, they just signed an Assembly Bill 1872, which is basically the same language as their Senate Bill 827, which prohibits California Department of Tax and Fee registration or administration from adjusting the cannabis excise tax. Right now, isn't California one of the heaviest tax states as far as cannabis goes already? I mean, is this doing anybody any favors in California?
Not making a bad situation worse.
Yeah, right.
As good as you can get.
Right. I mean, when we talk about markets and struggling markets and industries, California is like, I don't know what to even say about California anymore. It's really sad. But anyways, guys, lots of interesting things happening in the news these weeks, right? We have Vermont. Vermont's right there. It's one of the biggest things we're seeing all over the country. It's making waves, which is finally good to get some spotlight here. We had the FDA and the DEA, doing regulations, talking about things. I mean, I think they just made another thing today, actually. If I just read it here somewhere. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of searching as we go. But within all these things, guys, you have to pay attention. The biggest thing we always say is get on vote. We're getting to a point where we're getting a little bit behind on time here, and there's still so much to talk about that I want to talk about, because I appreciate having Adam on, because I mean, again, you're in Mass, you're working in the market, you see what's going on, and you're also a podcaster, which we didn't even talk about at all. So you sit in the same seats as we do where you're trying to educate and let people talk and figure out what the fuck's going on in most cases. Before we segue off to that, I wanted to get Thomas on with his growers guide this week. Thomas unfortunately missed last week, and he literally nailed it with a great growers guide for you guys with how to check on your terps, how how do you check on if your plant is ready for harvest. Your trichomes. I said terps. I didn't mean to say terps. But how you check your trichomes, what do you need to check your trichomes? What are you looking for? Is the biggest question we see on all of our pages right now. It's the biggest question I get asked. I get people sending me pictures of weed every friggin' day. The government's gonna bust me soon.
Get a microscope.
Yeah, right. And the funny part is they take a picture of it. They're like, "Is this ready yet?" It's like, that's not how you tell. Like, you can't tell by how your buds are formed and filling out or whatnot, because we'll talk about this a little bit, and I'm sure Thomas will talk about this, and he's got another great segment for you guys this week. Is what happens when you go too long or you cut down too early? Like, how does it change the effect of the cannabis? Because it really can, right? If you go too long, it'll give you more of that, and Thomas likes to say couch lock, right? We won't say indica like sensation, but it's going to bring it down. You know what I mean? And how can you tell what's amber, what's clear? I mean, obviously amber is pretty self-explanatory, but when we get into the cloudy situations and that those color transforms, how do we tell? You know what I mean? And you can't tell by looking at the plant. That's the one thing we gotta let everybody know out there. If you're looking at that plant or you're counting the days off since you put it in the ground, you might not necessarily, you might get close, but you're not going to nail it, right?
That's actually my superpower. I can actually see trichomes with my naked eye. So you're wrong. I'm just kidding.
I mean, there's many ways to do it, right? We got jeweler lenses, magnifying glass. Yeah. A lot of people like, what I really love seeing is like the stethoscopes, where they take the digital stethoscopes. I love it, man. You look like you're ready to go to the beach.
Tom, you should say, like, right before you play your segment, you should be like, roll that beautiful green footage from like bean footage and shit from a commercial.
Well, we're going to get right into it, Thomas. So, like I said, last week we were talking about, last couple of weeks we were talking about how to tell when your harvest is ready. What are we looking at this week from you?
Yeah, so this week we are jumping right into bud rot. So last week we talked a little bit, the last couple of weeks we talked a little bit about trichomes and what clear versus amber and cloudy is. Cloudy being more of like a milky looking trichome. You got to look at it with a scope. Adam might be able to see it with his naked eye. I sure as heck can't. In fact, if I take my glasses off, I can't even see any of you guys right now. So in that respect, I definitely need a scope to see them. But clear is pretty much, it looks like water droplets when you look underneath your scope. Cloudy, they look more like they are starting to fill with milk, or like the little droplets are droplets of a milkier liquid than clear. And then amber, self-explanatory, turns more of a darker brown or a crimson color. And then as far as harvest is concerned, I always like to harvest majority cloudy, because once you've received amber trichomes. Your amber trichomes have actually started to degrade the compounds or the cannabinoids that are in them, whether it be CBD or THC. And the more amber trichomes you have, the more of that couch lock feeling, as you mentioned, Joe, you'd actually be feeling. On the opposite end of the spectrum, clear trichomes, you end up with that racy head buzz feeling, not really enjoyed by too many people, and definitely not enjoyed by myself, as you can tell right now. Going on to this week's segment, we're talking about bud rot. So with bud rot, it's a huge issue in Vermont, especially the past week. I got a lot of calls about it. A lot of people saying, what's this brown stuff? What's going on here? Why is my branch dead? Why does my plant look this way? What is going on? Well, the temperatures dropped horribly. The humidity stayed high, and people weren't able to dry their plants off fast enough to prevent issues. So this is just a quick tip on bud rot, how to prevent it for next year, as well as how to treat it so that you don't spread it to the rest of your crop this year.
All right. Again, guys, one of the biggest things we hear from everybody is mold and rot, right? Again, things that we have a tremendous amount of control over personally, whether you're thinning down your plants, whether you're lollipopping correctly, getting airflow through them. And like, I love seeing these huge plants that stand 15 feet tall and 10 feet wide, but I look at them and I'm like, man, there's no air getting through that
There's
guy.
5 pounds of mold in the middle of that thing.
Right, you know what I mean? So how beautiful is this plant? Like, it's great to look at, but I mean, that's why we don't see those plants on the East Coast. People always want to grow these huge plants like they can do out in Cali, but Cali doesn't have these issues. They don't have the moisture issues. They don't have the rot issues that we see so extensively out here. Not to say that they don't exist out there, but we, as a percentage wise, we see it all the time. Well, let's go right to the video, guys. This is Thomas from Vermont Grow Coaching with his Grower's Guide.
Green footage. No.
All that green footage.
There you go.
Green footage.
That makes me feel special. That's great.
I gotta pee, guys. I'll be right back.
Cannabis tips and tricks. Today on Grower's Guide, we're going to be talking to you about bud rot, what it is, and how to prevent it. And let's not forget how to treat it when it's gone too far. Thanks for tuning into Grower's Guide. Hopefully now you should have a general idea of what bud rot looks like, how to treat it, and how to prevent it. If you have any questions or concerns regarding today's segment, please reach out to us at vermontgrowcoach.com. You can also find us on Instagram or Facebook and contact us directly at 802-342-5381.
All right. Now, there was no sound there purposely, right, Thomas? Because we were talking about sound stuff.
Yeah. So we've been having some issues with the audio and the video of the segments being a little choppy. So I decided to do one with no sound and see if that made things any better. In my opinion, it didn't really make any things better. It kind of made it worse. I would have rather at least heard the voice. So next week there'll be a lot more sound again. I'll go ahead and correct that.
We kind of miss your voice, but I mean, again, we talked about, you brought up some very great points, which we brought up a lot here today, and we bring up a lot is, spacing, airflow, things that you literally have all the control of the world over, right? One thing I wanted to ask you and then Adam about, it's about, necessarily the drying aspect. Everybody asks about drying right now. We got the plant. It went through to harvest. There's no rot. There's no mold. It's clean, right? And there's another thing I want to talk about is, when people talk about washing down their plants before they hang them, right? Because basically for molds and pesticides and bugs, right? So it's a two-part question. Are we washing or do we not wash? And if we do wash, what do we wash in, right? And then the second thing is when we actually have these things hanging, right? Because again, mold and bud rot can still happen through the drying process. What is that ideal temperature and humidity that people should really be targeted at to get a perfect cure on their crop?
I personally aim for around 40% humidity when I'm trying to dry, somewhere around 40 to 50%. Um, for us, this was one of the biggest lessons. When you start growing at scale, you should probably have a scale drying solution thought up beforehand. We got to the end of the season, and all of a sudden we have stalks that are the size of the palm of my hand, and we have to cut them down with chainsaws. And we're like, wait a second, the basement isn't gonna work for this. What the hell do we do? And we got really lucky and got hooked up with like a warehouse space for free. We ended up building like basically a giant black plastic tent room, and then put 2 industrial sized dehumidifiers in there just for 1/10 of an acre. So per acre, you're looking at like freaking 15 to 20 dehumidifiers on there. I don't think that that's the most efficient way to dry in our situation. Obviously, there are different reasons, or not reasons, different methods of what you're going to use that flour for, right? So for us, as mostly processing and turning it into oil, we just want to get it dry. We just want it to be dry. That's it. Because it doesn't really matter to us. We just want to get like the initial dry done and then get it packed up and get it ready for processing. Because we're going to steam distill it anyways for terps and then let it dry again and then decarb it. So it doesn't matter, for us. If I was if I were to do it again, I would probably go more the kiln approach, and I would buy like a shipping container and retrofit it with some fans and a kiln and some humidity gauges and all that fun stuff. And I would kind of get it dried within a day or two instead of 10 days. If I was drying for smokable flour, I would say that I would want to slowly dry it. 7 to 10 days was always my sweet spot. Usually on day number 9 was like, I could take these down. I'll let them sit one more day, and then I cure it in a jar for 2 to 3 weeks after that for smokable flour. And my shit that was homegrown never really looked like homegrown. Like, it was nice thick nugs. It looked better than most of the dispensary shit around here. So it was pretty nice. So yeah, I would say that different, whatever you're gonna use the flour for in your end product is gonna kind of figure out what your drying solution is gonna be at the end, and you should have that always in mind before you put anything in the ground, even on small scale. I always was thinking, okay, I'm allowed 12 plants. So I don't want to do 2 6 and 6 cycles, because that means I will always have a period that I will not be operating. So instead of 6 and 6 cycles, I did 2, 3, and 3 cycles. So then I was able to harvest basically every 5 or 6 weeks off of a personal home grow, which is insane. I never ran out of shit when I was growing, ever. I never had to worry about it. And my electric bill was somewhere around $300 a month to be growing that amount of bud. So it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. My soil was like my biggest cost, because after a while you just get genetics. You have your clones, you have all your mothers, you have all that stuff going on. So, but yeah, and the moral of the story for that long rant was, you got to determine what your final use is going to be for the flour, so you can determine what your drying method is going to be, but always have a plan no matter what.
Yep.
So as far as the drying is concerned, The only thing I really wanted to touch base on is unless I'm working with turning the CBD into some sort of distillate or a broad spectrum product that doesn't really have too many terpenes or other cannabinoids and stuff into it, I would actually still continue to do a slow dry or go with a cryocure style dry, only because you lose a lot of terpenes by drying fast. So if you're using a full spectrum product and you're able to still have a little bit of THC and everything in there, then I would love the accompaniment of the terpenes in there as well that aren't lost through the process. So I would still dry slow over the course of 7 to 10 days, or I would do what I do with most of the products I do now on a small scale, and that's use a small cryocure style freeze drying machine.
And there are still terpenes that are left over. Just obviously you off gas some of them through the quick dry process, but on the oil side, it's still like I've had this debate with people. They try to say that our oil isn't full spectrum. I'm like, yes, it is. There's terpenes in there. There's 100%. There's 7 different terpenes in there in the final product. So, you know, like we definitely lost a bunch, you know, because
right, but you still have a full spectrum product.
Exactly.
It's all there. People. I mean, that's one of the biggest arguments in our industry: what's full spectrum, what's broad spectrum. Again, we see a lot of misinformation and a lot of mislabeling on those bottles, where you literally are like, you can't have this with this process. Like it's just, it can't work. You know what I mean? Again, we see a lot of mislabeling with that. The one thing I wanted to talk to you guys was the curing process, because you guys both said something that a lot of people question me on, or question us all on, is the jarring, right? The effects of jar and how that works. It's one thing that we don't talk about a lot, because I mean, we see cannabis, as a consumer of cannabis, we see a lot of cannabis that we could all probably say was never seen a life inside of a jar, right? Very poorly cured. But like, if you take that cannabis and throw it in a jar for a week and off gas it, what comes out is almost a completely different product, right? Completely. What does the jarring process do?
Listen, I only store my weed in glass jars, right? So lately I haven't been growing my own weed because it's been all hemp. So I've had to buy it from my local guy, and I get some fire, you know, that shit. And when I buy it in my little plastic baggie, it's like, I put it in my glass jar, and within a few days, it's fucking skunky smelling and stinky smelling. And I'm like, all right, there we go. Now I can smoke some shit. You know, like it's night and day. It's night and day. Even if you have shit that's been sitting for a couple of years, you throw it in a glass jar and you could change the whole complexity of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the thing with that though is the off gassing of the jar, right? Like, what do you guys do? You can't just throw it in a jar and leave it on the shelf for a couple months, right? There's a little bit more of a process to it, correct?
Yeah, I call it burping. I don't know if that's what everybody calls it. I just kind of like, I'll crack the jar, I'll crack the top, and I'll leave it on like just a little bit of air getting through to it for about 20-30 minutes a day, and kind of close it back up. Everybody's is different. Everybody's curing method is different though. So
I'm extremely particular about the curing method. I actually have a specific room that is always set to 62% humidity, so that when I open the jars, it opens up into the exact same humidity. I don't allow any extra in or any extra out.
Brilliant, my man. Fucking brilliant.
At that point, you don't even need the 2 or 3 minutes. Take the top off for 30 seconds, move the jar around a little bit, slap it back on, and you're good to go. 2 weeks later, and it's fantastic.
And this is my favorite thing about
literally
cannabis.
Was where I was going to go with this was, and then we've seen these issues too, where you're actually introducing humidity to your jar, which creates, as we know,
and you're like, oh, why does it smell like hay? You're smoking mold, man.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys have to understand how these processes work. And Thomas, you kind of said it right there. You can almost smell it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, if you're curing in a jar, I mean, we've seen it happen. Last year was a great season for that to happen because it was really humid through our curing times, right? At least up here it was. So I know a lot of people who are reintroducing humidity to their weed, which is not good. You know what I mean? Of course, you can buy the little packs. They're out there. They work fine, right? There's no major issues with those. And everybody uses them. But like I said, the jar is really where it's at. You know, you want to get your product looking right, fresh, tasty. Put it in a jar. They should go right into a jar for the beginning, right?
The main difference between using the humidity packs, whether in the jars or outside the jars, and actually burping the jars properly, is going to be your final smell. The humidity packs do remove a little bit of the terpenes, and they do change the final smell and flavor just a little bit, you can definitely tell the difference if you're comparing two products that one dried are cured with and one without the humidipack. With that said, I've had people from Colorado and stuff say, oh, there's no reason for you to have humidipacks in Vermont. That's something we use out here. You shouldn't need that there at all. But unfortunately, they're wrong because they work both ways. And for a lot of growers out there that don't have the ability to have a room set at the exact humidity needed like I do, or don't have a room that is within spec to be able to open their jars and properly burp them, the humidipacks do really work well in that respect.
No, it's great. And now we're talking about strains. We're talking about all this shit. And now the only thing left we have to go over is our strain of the week. So Rodney, let's get Rodney up on deck here, guys. We're running a little behind on time. I thank everybody for tuning in, staying in, but we're not going to want to miss this week's episode of the strain of the week. So Rodney, give it to us. Speak a little loud because your mic's a little down.
This strain of the week. Mike's on. Cool. This strain of the week is Gorilla Grease. I got it from the Hempire Collective in Clare, Michigan. Yeah, it was like a vanilla like jet aroma, like great taste.
I'm drooling.
It was really good, dude. It was really fucking good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm Chef Rodney.
No, it's another great strain, and big shout out to the Hempire guys. Those guys are really supporting Rodney, the show, giving us access to some really awesome genetics for us to bring onto the show. New dispensaries, so guys, check those guys out. Rodney's been really working hard with those guys, and again, big shout out to Michigan for everything they're doing. We appreciate here on the show. I just wish they'd send me some testers as well. I'm not gonna complain, but
for real.
For real, right? But a lot of people don't understand, you guys, we're talking about all these great things all day long, right? And really it comes down to genetics. So when you're a patient, you need to know what genetics are. You know how they're going to affect you. We talk about terps and the value of terpenes, which, Adam and Thomas, myself, we value those terpenes, right? Like a lot of people could care less. They want that THC content, which, you kind of have a trade-off at some point, right? So here's our strain of the week. Guys, I just want to make another quick plug to everybody who's tuned in that our YouTube channel. Like if you guys haven't noticed, we're kind of back on the YouTube side of things due to the new laws and restrictions through Facebook and correlations with Zoom and everything, all the programs we're using. So if you guys go to our YouTube pages, all of our shows, all of our segments are archived there you can share them, you can download them, and you can hit the subscribe button to support the show. So give these guys some love. Go there, hit the subscribe button. Make sure we know that you're there. Follow the show. Share the show. There's a lot of education that happens every week. And in case if you ever miss a show, they're always there. So now we're going to be going live there, so you can get the show literally right after we're done, which would be great. All of Chef Ronnie's strains of the weeks, all of Thomas's and Vermont Grow Coaching's growers guides are on there as well. Again, wealth of information, guys. Just make sure you go hit the subscribe button. And while you're there, go check out Herban Acres and go check out What Did Adam Say, which is a great podcast name, man.
It's been my brain for everything, man. Like when I came up with that fucking What Did Adam Say, I was like, oh my God, I finally did it. Finally, I have my branding. I did it. Yay. 8 years old, 29 years old. I figured out my branding.
Well, the best part is, again, Adam, I want to thank you for having me on your show. Normally, I don't get to sit on the other side of the mic,
3.5 hours.
Let my mouth go wild because we had a fun night. We had a fun time,
That's the one where you took the edibles, right?
Yep. Yeah. He was high on edibles to start the show, and
you could tell.
I was just letting him go on he would go on like 15-minute long rants, and I'm like, well, that was informative, so why am I going to stop him?
I was taking notes. Yeah.
Well, you know how it is, right? So like, as a show host, we try to stay biased. We try to stay a little off the topic because it's not about us, right? We're here to bring on a guest, right? So very little do we get to come on a show and speak our minds because we're me, you, the Rick Nyas, all these guys that have all these shows that we're talking to some of the best people in their positions in this industry, right? We learn things, we know things, we have tons of questions, and like you said, if you're on a show for 20 minutes, it's really hard to do the question and answer and really get down to what we're talking about. Like today, we got down to topsoil, guys. Like who the fuck's talking about topsoil and
Dude,
stuff
I feel
like that.
we in 2 hours and 10 minutes, we have barely scratched the surface.
Oh yeah.
And that's a sad thing. That's why I want to say again, like out of these 2 hours where everybody seems like we just overload them in information. This is nothing, right? And we talk about this all the time. So we're the guys that, I have something to say. I had a great time talking. I appreciate you having me on the show. Those brownies were pretty kick-ass. Not gonna lie.
I loved it, man. It was worth being. We talked for like a half hour after the show too. Like I was like falling asleep. I'm like, bro, I need to go to bed. It's like 1:30 in the morning.
I'm easy to talk to. What can I say? I don't know.
Exactly. You were talking earlier about repeating yourself over and over. So let me give you something that's never been said on film before in my life. So this year I won Nikan's award for Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and it was really
dude, congratulations with that.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. It was bittersweet because last Nikan I almost didn't get in, and this is why. I was supposed to work with Michael Doobie, and Michael Doobie the night before Nikan basically called me and told me he didn't need me anymore, and I was like, oh, well, I'm broke. I don't have any money. I can't get into Nikan. How the fuck am I gonna do this? And my homie Hope Marion, she hooked me up with Mascan. She was on the board at the time, and she said, they want somebody to film the panels. Why don't you film the panels? It's not gonna pay you, but you can come film the panels and you'll get into Nikan free. I said, hell yeah. I'm about it. So I all 8 hours for 3 days straight. I filmed for Mascan for free, and then went home and edited all the film. It was like another 10 hours of editing, and all for free, and gave it to them. They offered me a board seat my first meeting of Mascan because of it. I didn't take it just because I'm so busy. I wish I could have. But all that to say, last year I struggled to get into Nikan, and this year, if Nikan would have happened, it would have been a completely and utterly different scenario for me. I feel like
it's the fruits of your labor, dude.
Yeah, bro. I feel like it would have been like it would have felt like celebrity status, and then I feel like next year would be even fucking crazier because we're just scratching the surface now, and we had to take a step back because of COVID and all that shit. So it's like it's crazy, and it's honestly I still just to even win young entrepreneur of the year in a category with fucking Laura Beaner, who owns Healing Rose, and Eve Santana, who's a partial owner of Pure Oasis, the only black owned dispensary in Massachusetts, and
huge shout outs to those guys. Huge.
And Allie Greenberg, who's opening a dispensary with her dad Ralph. Like, how the fuck, like, when I won, I was just like, oh man, I wonder who's gonna win this. There's so many fucking cool people. Like, before, like, all the categories would come up, and like it was like Massachusetts something of the year, and Goldie Piff was on there. I was like, oh, that's gotta be Goldie, give that to Goldie. And then her name came up. I'm like, I knew it. And then like I had like 3 of those in a row, and I'm like, man, young entrepreneur of the year. I was like, I gotta give that to Laura. Like, I have to give it to Laura in that category. And then my name came up, and I'm just like, I was at the studio that day. I was like, literally, like, I just started making music again after like 4 years off, and I was at the studio with my boy, and I'm just standing there literally like this. He's like, what? I was like, dog, I won. He's like, what? I was like, I won fucking young entrepreneur of the year. What, dude? And he was like, wow, congrats. Like, I haven't won anything. I was like, fuck you, you haven't won anything. Remember the music competition in 2008 that you beat me and I cried because you beat me? Like, don't tell me you haven't won anything, you fucking asshole. Like, so it's super bittersweet and super cool, and it's super humbling too, because the ladies that I was in that category with, I did not expect to win that whatsoever. And for me to win that was like, wait a second.
All right, guys, I gotta jump off
instrumental,
here.
Man.
I gotta jump over.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the show. Adam was
you get another show. We're
awesome.
gonna
Tim, awesome. I gotta jump over and go do the
We'll see you soon, Jeff.
Dude, I wish there was a way for all of us to just like hop into that chat. Just all of a sudden, all of us are there.
Let me see what we can't do.
Oh my God! All of us were on that one video.
Send me the StreamYard link. We can all hop in.
Send us that Zoom link.
Like, wait a minute. We're like, nah, I brought people.
I come with a whole group of people, man.
You guys jump in the comments over there. Jump in the comments and fucking say that shit, and then we'll
That's hilarious.
just go click.
I'm serious.
Check out Chef's Garage Effect.
The entourage effect. There we go. All right, guys. I'll see you guys over there. Cheers.
All right. If you guys want to check out Chef Rodney, he's going to be on the Token Dead's radio show kicking off
It's
here right about
Toking
now.
with the Dead. Sorry to correct
Token
you.
with the Dead. No, they've
Legal reasons make me say that.
Yeah, right. AMC has sued them and they've won.
Womp womp womp. They fucking suck. Sorry.
Yeah, ironically, we talk about
I was
trademarks and
excited for the
things of that
season
nature.
finale of The Walking Dead, and now I'm kind of like, oh, you guys are dicks. Like, honestly, like, just let our
And
boys.
then they shut it down. Like, they're not even making them anymore. So, but I mean, intellectual property is a bitch. We talked about this last week where the FDA was actually issuing classes, a whole online course about how to protect your IPs. You know what I mean? And I'm sure everybody on this panel again can say, hey, we've had some IP stolen, we've had some issues and ideas and things that we were a part of that were taken and utilized. And how do we protect that in an industry that has no regulations and has no systems and has no support from insurances or any other companies except for court and law. You know what I mean? Usually on the bad end, not the good end, right? But that being said, great show today, guys. A lot of us have to get popping off here. We'll do is we'll end with Rodney's segment here. So, guys, when we end, we'll just end with Rodney's segment. Next week, we do have the Ganj Father coming on with us. He is an amazing. I can't wait to talk to this guy because there's so many things that they're doing. Food-based, cannabis-based, education-based. Like the guy's really blowing it up. The following week we have Leo coming on, which is like we said, he's he's for minorities. That's gonna be a great show. I talked to him for like 4 hours yesterday, and he blew me away, which is not easy to do, right? We talked to everybody, so as you know, Adam, when we talk to some people really blow you away and bring some really fucking good education that we never even thought about, which blows my mind. So you guys are not gonna want to miss that. You're gonna want to check out the What Did Adam Say show as well. Hopefully you keep that going on a weekly basis because I love being on it, and the support is there for you. Like we said, if you guys ever want to find an old archive, a show, one of our segments, just go back to the YouTube and you can search for any of us through YouTube. Give us a like so we can actually get our name embedded into YouTube. We were there.
Subscribe and then hit the bell and hit all notifications when you subscribe to his channel.
Yeah. I mean, it only helps us do what we do to help you guys with the education that we provide. So huge thank you to Thomas again. Yeah, huge thank you to Thomas. And like I said, guys, you can go there and find any of the growers guides, any of the strains of the weeks, any of the fun stuff. We're going to end it on the strain of the week with Chef Rodney. I'm going to say thank you to Timothy Fair again for coming on Vermont Cannabis Solutions. Hopefully next week we can have another important update for you guys. Tim, real quick though, does this look like this could be something that would happen by next week this time?
No, it's the Legislative Council has to draft the final edits, make all the changes, proofread. Basically, it's a formal process called the delivery of the bill to the governor, at which point he'll have 5 days. We're hoping within 2 weeks. I mean, but then again, a month ago, I was saying this bill was dead. So who knows? Maybe by next week on the show, we'll have some popping some champagne.
And let me just reiterate this because everybody's blowing my phone up this week. It's been crazy. If this bill passes, it doesn't mean next week we get to go sell weed yet, right?
No. Ask Adam about that. They implemented what, 2016? But it does. It's a starting pistol. It gets
2016. It took them 2 years to open a freaking dispensary. Yeah,
it's gonna be the same thing.
People forget though, like, we start from nothing, and we have to build all the systems, we have to build all the laws, we have to find the people to sit down there and write them. There's a process to get to be able to actually issue a license to somebody in cannabis, right? Like we have to build everything, the whole structure, so it takes a few years. Everybody's calling me up.
A business in the right way too. People who want to get into it, now let's form a company. Let's find you professional services. Let's find your investors or your, where your money's coming from. Let's get a business plan. Let's find a location. Is it going to opt in? Are we going to have real estate? Are you leasing? Are you buying? And there's so many, little pieces and components that need to come together that 18 months, yes, it seems like a long time, but if we get started today, it'll work well for people really getting going off the ground floor.
And plus, like you said, Tim, everybody who's going to be involved in this is going to have to start. Now we're legally able to start. So now we can put seeds in the ground.
There's a process with knowing that you've got to go.
Yeah, I mean, Adam will tell you, how long does that process from putting that seed in the ground, Adam, to getting that bottle in your hands to be able to retail?
I mean, you're spending at least 6 months doing that. And that's on the CBD side. That's quick. On the marijuana side, it's fucking crazy. Like you were saying, you had River Run on here at Ed and Big Ed, which is so funny that it's Ed and Big Ed, and Ed is like twice the size of Big Ed.
Yeah, right.
He's fucking he's when I shake his hand, my hand disappears. I love those guys.
It's like Andre the Giant, right? He's a big dude, right? And
He's a big
again,
teddy
huge
bear.
shots out to them, to those guys, because they're like the epitome of what we talk about every day. This guy's literally going to the grind every day, paying everything they had to do to pay, and taking 3 years. They literally paid for a building for 3 years before they get the license to even use it.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars just spent for nothing because they just wanted to make the process last longer. Yay! Just to tell them that they're eventually approved. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's just that's where the industry pisses me off. You know what I mean? Like,
same.
if you're gonna hold those people to these regards, where for 3 years they have to have a building so they can get this license, that's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, if you're gonna fast track these MSOs, let's fast track some of these local businesses too, because that's who we all want to support. Like, I don't really buy from dispensaries at all because now I'm aware of who owns them. And the only dispensaries I really shop at in Massachusetts is Pure Oasis in Boston, which I mentioned is the only black-owned dispensary. The only. There's like 100.
We're working on getting those guys on the show. Actually, Leo is coming up to Boston for their grand opening, so maybe we should go down there, Adam, and have some fun with those guys.
Fuck yes, dude, that would be amazing. I love those guys. I've only been able to shop in there. Actually, I haven't even been able to shop in there. I haven't been to any dispensaries lately because I haven't been up in Boston. You know what I mean? There's also Caroline's Cannabis in Uxbridge, I believe.
Yep.
I'm never down there either, but there's also one in Attleboro that I hear is run by people like us. So there are a few people that are breaking through the barriers and getting to where they need to get, and that's really exciting, especially for people like me that they're laying the groundwork for people like me.
Yeah. Well, like in any new industry, we're going to see the rise. We're going to see the green rush, I guess you could call it, the gold rush, and then you're going to see the cream rise to the top. And when the dust settles after a few years, just like we see now, there's a lot of businesses that were here at this time last year. There's a lot of companies. There's a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of advocates that were here a year ago that are not here anymore. You know what I mean? They've gone on to different industries. They've gone on to different things. They've sold
been exposed.
They've been exposed. There's a lot of those issues happening. And it's just, there's a lot of crooked business. So, just do things right. You know what I mean? And if you want to be legal and we want to get rid of these stigmas, this is the biggest thing for me. We want to get rid of stigmas. Why we got to cut corners, or why do we got to play the black market role in a commercial industry? You know what I mean? Which really just makes that finger point even further towards us as a
All right, John, I'm going to take you till here too. We got to get going. It's almost
all right, brother. I am done too. Here we go.
We should have a roundtable afterwards. I thought about this all night, but I think at least I got to call it a go. My fiance will kill me, so we got to.
So I gotta go. I got people waiting for me too. It's great conversation today, guys. We've had we have run a really great show. So it's hard to pull away from. Congratulations again to Adam. That's a huge Neat Can Award. We were nominated, so I totally understand how it feels to be in the graces of some of the company that we're within. Win or not, right? All these guys deserve huge accolades for the work they do because they're there for a reason, right? With that being said, we're going to end with Chef Rodney. Guys, Adam, thank you again. Thomas, thank you. We'll talk to you guys really quick on the flip side. Let me get this going, and that's it. We're going to call it a wrap. Here is Deliciously Dope Strain of the Week, guys. This is in the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. Joe Smith, we'll talk to you later. Thank you again, Adam Souza. Check him out.
Thank you.
Guys, go give Herban Acres a like and some love. And also Vermont Grow Coaching and Vermont Cannabis Solutions. Guys, we'll be back next week. And don't forget, the Deliciously Dope is on with, what's the right way to say it now? Token with the Dead? I don't want to say it wrong.
Token with the Dead.
I don't want to get anybody sued over that, right? Because it is kind of touch and go. But all right, guys, here we go with the Gorilla Grease.
I'm Chef Rodney from Deliciously Dope, a journey into the world of culinary cannabis. And I've been a chef my entire life. Being raised by the kitchen, cannabis was something that I utilized in order to help me with the stress of a very demanding industry. Little did I know that there was something more to this amazing plant than just the entourage effect. So I've decided to travel the world in order to find out more about the medicinal benefits that we've overlooked before. So come along with me as I break it down and show you how to inhale the good shit and exhale the bad shit. This is Deliciously Dope Strain of the Week. What up, Canada fam? It's your boy Chef Rodney from Deliciously Dope, bringing you Deliciously Dope Strain of the Week. This week we have Gorilla Grease for you guys. Coming in at about 19.3% THC, Gorilla Grease is an indica dominant hybrid that alleviates stress, curbs anxiety, acts as a pain reducer, and puts insomnia to bed. Is there anything this strain can't do? I mean, holy hell, the aroma of Gorilla Glue alone is that of a wafty vanilla jet fuel smell, which is amazing. I love those fuel, that gas. I love that. Which explains the terps found in it. Now, speaking of terpenes, this strain consists of caryophyllene, limonene, and myrcene. These are very reminiscent of Gorilla Glue, which is a pretty solid strain. Huge staple here in Michigan. I've had Gorilla Glue a lot, a lot. Now, it's not even a question you should smoke this, but yes, absolutely. I mean, why? My new Canada fam over at Empire Collective in Clare, Michigan, told me to give this strain, Gorilla Grease, my bad, a try. You said it was a huge seller everywhere they kick it out to. It sells out within, days. So I grabbed it up, man, and I looked at it, and I was like, holy hell. I'll give you guys a close review in 3, 2, 1. So make sure you go check out my boys up at the Empire Collective, Clare, Michigan. Stop by, they treat you just like family. Ask about the backstory. Backstory is extremely important there. They're doing an amazing thing, and they've got awesome plans to expand in the next few years. Trey, the owner, was walking me through some of the stuff. He showed me a few of the things, taught me a lot that I actually already didn't know. And that's what it's about, man. It's always about learning. And to be honest with you, Empire Collective, we're going to see big things from them. Y'all stay tuned to that. Without any other further ado, I'm going to go ahead and try this out. Cheers. Oh damn. Now, this has been Deliciously Dope Strain of the Week. I'm Chef Rodney. Peace.
He needs to put some music in the background or something like that right here.
Yeah. Well, we're getting there, guys, and that's it, guys. We have the In the Weeds music. We're all working on this, man. It's a lot of fun. That's the greatest thing with technology nowadays. Like every week, there's something new we can try, we can touch. There's more Zoom options. There's more meeting options. There's more show options, which is great.
Hey Zoom, if you're listening, start letting motherfuckers use their DSLRs on here, man. I had this shit plugged in the whole time. I haven't been able to use it.
I know that feeling. We have the same problem here, man. I've tried my DSLR, which would be such a better picture.
Yeah,
we have a lot of these weird...
Look at me, I'm blurry. You people can't even see how good looking I am. Look at
right. I feel like I'm enlarged today. I feel like I have a big head. I'm like the big bobblehead doll over here with you guys. My head's still the whole
you got
screen.
A bobblehead.
Again, guys, great show.
I got like this shiny thing that makes it look like I don't shower or something.
The T-zone.
It's that head, man. Well, again, guys, thank you for a great show. Let's all touch base here real soon. I'm gonna pull the plug on this and go chase my dog. It sounds like he's running down the street. We'll talk to you guys next week. Again, next week's show, the Ganj Father, guys. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be a great show. I'm going to hit the end button. Thank you again, Adam. Everybody, check out Adam. Herban Acres. What did Adam say? Show. And you still have a kiosk open, right? Or are they all closed?
No, I got a kiosk open in Dartmouth, and then we have retailers that sell our products, and we're still fully operating online. So
if you guys are around the Dartmouth area, go by, check out the kiosk. It's awesome. All of Adam's help is amazing. They're great people. They're very well educated, so they can answer your questions. Like I said, feel free to reach out to Adam. He's pretty available, easily reachable, and he doesn't. I don't think you mind talking to anybody. Do you?
My phone number is literally on Instagram. Like, I don't care. Go get it.
Yeah, mine is too, sadly, so I don't answer the phone ever. No.
Same.
Unless you text me, you ain't getting through, right?
Yeah.
But props to you guys again, Adam. It was awesome seeing you win that award. It was
Thank
great.
you, bro.
Everybody in on those that have been nominated, we're all great friends of ours, as we all know. We're part of family here, and I appreciate the work that you do, man. So big props to
Appreciate you,
you.
bro.
You're doing the right thing. You're trying to pave the way for the right things, and like you said, business is not easy. There's cutthroats. There's issues. Partnerships tend to fail. You never know what's going to happen, man. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful. Like right now, with what we see going on in the East Coast, we're going to say the East Coast right now. We, like you said, we got to kind of pull it back together. Let's work together. Let's get this stuff accomplished, and let's move forward, man. This is a big industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we got to work together, man. That's all we can do.
That's it. All right, guys, that's it. In the weeds. Done.
Peace.